City Council, April 26, 2022. Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Mayor Messer.
Here.
Mr. Norris.
Here.
Mr. Sellers.
Here.
Vice Mayor Matthews.
Here.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Here.
Mrs. Eggers.
Here.
Mr. Cope.
Here. Please join us for the invocation and pledge.
Lord, thank you for this beautiful day you gave us today that we can all come together, discuss city affairs. Thank you for watching over our town. Thank you for just being a part in our lives. We just look forward to learning more with each other and learning more about our community, how we can benefit, how we can grow and develop in a proper way. Thank you, Lord Jesus. In your name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can't help but smile when I hear a full crowd saying that behind me. That was good.
Amen.
In consideration of work, regular meeting minutes, April 12th, can I get a motion to adopt, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on that? Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Mr. Cope.
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Norris.
Yes.
Mr. Sellers.
Yes.
Mayor Messer.
Yes.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Yes.
Consideration of work session meeting minutes, February 15th. Can I get a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Just want to say, normally our minutes are much faster, but we had a very long meeting, so I appreciate Mr. Burke for handling the minutes for this one and getting it to us here.
Absolutely. Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sellers.
Yes.
Mr. Cope.
Yes.
Mr. Norris.
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers.
Yes.
Mr. Lamoureux.
Yes.
Mayor Messer.
Yes. All right. So, the moment we've all been waiting for. We have an Arbor Day Proclamation. I'm going to read that first, and then we're going to have Shade Tree come up and present the winners of this year's contest. So, and this is also the first proclamation with my name on it. And we have the mayor here, or the former mayor, to video and photograph her granddaughter. So this is a good day. Be it proclaimed, whereas Arbor Day, a special day set aside for the planting of trees, is now being observed throughout the nation as an occasion for recognizing the value of trees and forests to the welfare of our citizens. And whereas the City of Lebanon encourages all residents of the community to plant a tree to commemorate this special day and to recognize the importance of trees in our lives. And whereas trees in our city increase the property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, promote environmental consciousness, and beautify our community. And whereas the City of Lebanon has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting efforts. Now, therefore, I, Mark Messer, and by virtue of the authority vested in me by the mayor, as the mayor of the thought I was going to get through it. As mayor of the City of Lebanon in the state of Ohio, I do hereby proclaim April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the City of Lebanon and urge all members of our community to renew our pledge to protect, improve, and beautify our natural surroundings. So with that, we'll have Shade Tree come up and get to see all these incredible posters that were painted.
Can I just turn this around?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, welcome everybody. This is the most exciting day for City Council, in my opinion. I might be a little opinionated. I've been on the Tree Commission for a long time, and by far my favorite thing of the year is to see the children express whatever our title is this year. It was Trees Are Cool. And we have trees with sunglasses, we have trees with little talking balloons, there's all kinds of trees, and it's so much fun to see it. I want to thank Mayor Messer and the City Council for supporting the tree commission the way that they do. Anytime you see a healthy tree on the side of the road, there's so much that goes into that, the work that we do and the education that we take, because the city provides opportunities for us to learn more about your trees. Last week, I was honored to attend the Tree City USA's 31st acceptance of an award for Tree City USA. So that was an exciting time, and there's very few counties in our community, or very few communities in our area, our part of the state, who can boast that. So be proud that you're in Lebanon. And I want to say one more thing about the posters. We have all the schools, all the grades that enter the contest. And there's so many of these posters that should be first places, but there's only one first, one second, one third, and then there's a pile of first places that have to go back because we just can't award that many. And this year was one of the hardest. The kids did great jobs on the posters, so congratulations to all of you. Thank you for the teachers. I don't know if we have teachers here, but thank you to all the teachers who help with this and the parents who support them.
Thank you, Mickey. I'm Jim Ludwig. I've served on the committee for a number of years. And I, first of all, want to say, Casey, you're just a great leader. We appreciate the leadership that you give in so many ways. She has even given us a cheat sheet here that we could read from. and that's the way she prepares, and we appreciate that. Mickey's already shared some of what Casey has said. I just would say I am so pleased to be here in this city that invests in trees. Part of what we've had to do the last couple years is not plant as many trees, but take care of any trees that would be dangerous, trees that would be invasive, things like that. And you need to do maintenance. And that's what this committee is about, and the training that we receive, the leadership that we receive, that we can help the city have that type of, to have beautiful tree cover. I would just tell a story. I don't know about you, but one of my favorite memories as a child was on a tree swing, and I wind it up. Anybody ever do that? And then you get all dizzy. But then sometimes you just look up, and sometimes you look down, and trees are great. Trees are great, and we're just glad to be part of that here in this community. And the whole idea of having children being involved in this from the beginning, J. Stanley Morgan, who started this in Nebraska, he was a newspaper editor and had this idea that he wanted to promote planting of trees. He had children involved in that and probably doing some artistry in that. They're just celebrating. So we're here tonight to celebrate. Okay. We have some names and some certificates.
So this is how we're going to call your name, and we're going to do St. Francis first, and we'll go by grade. And you come up and go to Jim, and he will give you your certificate, and then just stand up here, and we'll get a picture at the end of everybody after you stand up. And we'll call Lebanon Public School after that. I do need a cheat sheet for this. I didn't remember all these names. I did look at most of the posters, though, and I did remember judging most of those. Yes, please. Okay, so we're going to St. Francis de Sales, third grade. Third place is Jackson Pruitt. Some of these aren't here tonight, but I'm going to call their names anyway. Second place is Ari Vinson. We'll blame it on Casey, right? I'm sorry, Ari Vinson. Congratulations. Okay, so just stand behind. And first place is Lauren Cole, who I think is also missing.
All right. Can you hold that up so we can see your poster?
It's always bad being on this side, because
Yeah,
you never
I know.
get to see them.
Just kind of show
That's a
everybody.
good idea. Show your poster to the city
Yeah, you
council.
gotta make a spin so we can see them.
Fourth grade. Third place is Heidi Moeller.
I like the box.
Second place is Juliana Kufa. How did I do? Is that how you say your name? And first place is Vanessa Tremy. In 5th grade, we have 3rd place, Haven Keys. Second place is Asher DeFalco. And first place is Haley Yance. In 6th grade, 3rd place is Colin Feist. Second place is Noah Schmidt. And first place is Lucy Lewers. So now we'll go through Donovan. 3rd grade. I should have glasses on. 3rd place is Gabby Barron. Second place, Zoe Davis. And first place is Amira Williams. Amira. Thank you. 4th grade, 3rd place is Ellie Perkins. Second place is Taylor Bass. And first place goes to Ella Long. And that concludes the winners.
Mickey. Yeah, Mickey.
Do you want him to stand in front of this?
No,
Would there
Mickey,
be
come
room?
stand with them.
Well, Jen, you too.
Oh, you're good. You're
You
good.
guys are the show.
All right, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Trees. All right, thanks so much, guys. Thank you.
Well done.
So before I dismiss all you guys to go get some ice cream, she made mention that we are a tree city, and Casey did an awesome video last year kind of detailing what that means and how we celebrate it in Lebanon. I posted it, but it's also on the city's YouTube channel. But what has to happen for us to be identified as a tree city is, number one, we have to have a tree board that she is the head of. Spending at least $2 per capita on urban forestry, and then also celebrating Arbor Day, like we did just a few seconds ago. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and we enjoy having you, and we will look forward to next year. So congratulations to all the winners. And you are more than welcome to head on out, because we got a long agenda if you want to. See you, everybody.
You don't know. They could have been really excited about short-term rentals. That's exactly right.
Is that, are you related? Is that one of those trick questions? Like
So next we're gonna recognize some visitors. The first is Scott Dries, and he'll be speaking about the text amendments. Let me see here. Would you guys rather speak during the public hearing or to this directly, or both?
Sorry, this is my first Lebanon
Yeah.
City Council
No,
meeting.
you're fine.
I'd rather wait myself for
Okay.
the public hearing.
All right.
So you guys
Okay, perfect.
have some discord.
Absolutely. And then Anthony DePerna? Yes, sir. Please come to the microphone and then state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Can we get the back door?
Are you?
I'm here for ordinance 9.
Oh, it's your public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
I can sit.
You're good. You're good.
Thank you.
So we have no recognition of visitors until the public hearing.
And here we go.
So we will now open up, we have a zoning code text amendment. Scott, I'll let you take
Okay.
it from here.
I think we'll need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, Greg Oros, our city planner, has a series of slides that will review in detail the various text amendments that are part of this ordinance. So I'll turn it over to Greg Oros, our city planner.
Thanks for having me. Once again, this is our Envision Lebanon comprehensive plan, and these are the text amendments associated with that plan. So the plan recommendations, this is based on protecting community character chapter. The plan action items are below. These are kind of a little snapshot from the plan that relate to these text amendments. So these are the community identified objectives during our year and a half long comprehensive plan process. To continue to update the zoning and land use codes to reflect the plan goals, to ensure new development considers quality and sense of place, expand the central business district zoning, and target primary corridors for enhancement. So business-related zoning code amendments, and once again, this is a snapshot, and more details in your sheet and in the zoning code text amendment packet. Off-street parking, a minimum of 15 feet instead of 10 feet from the property lines. What we're running into is heavy utility issues, 10 feet with all the fiber optic, gas lines, everything related to that right-of-way is just not enough space between the parking and the back of the sidewalk. No more than one drive aisle with parking on each side may be permitted in the front of the building. We have something very similar to this right now. This is just simplified language that gets rid of the percentages. The old Kroger building is kind of what we're looking at, and kind of those abandoned larger footprint structures that have a lot of distance between the building and the road. Planning Commission may permit a reduction of the required number of parking spaces. We like to give developers options for them to figure out exactly how many parking spaces they need instead of directly mandating that. So this gives Planning Commission a lot more flexibility to do that. Changeable copy signs can be 65% of the total area, or 17.6 square feet. This is to adapt to new technology. Currently, the provision is for 16 square feet, which used to be the 2 by 8 that you see like at the Y and other places. And it's kind of changing to a little bit more, less of an elongated rectangle and a little bit more of a square. So it equals up to 17 square feet. And also there's no need to push. Right now it's 50%, 65 allows for a little bit larger screen without forcing them to build a bigger sign just to fit in that dimension. Allowing masonry materials on signs up to 8 feet to add a little bit more interest. Currently we allow up to 7. And allow decorative columns with signage. A good example of that is Traditions of Lebanon, where they have the pillar with a little flame coming up there, and currently you're only allowed 1 signage per frontage. This would allow for a little bit more variety in our developments. Also, another kind of business development incentive, permit 1 additional sign during construction. Right now, we only allow for the 1 larger sign, and everyone wants the 1 larger sign that says either who's the construction company and then maybe a rendering of what is actually going on. This would allow them to do it. Permit 1 off-site signage at a location that corresponds to the construction site. So this is maybe your construction site is down the street just a little bit to place a temporary sign that is actually in the ground at that location to say, hey, the development's this way. Allow Planning Commission to modify use-specific regulations similar to modifications to the design standards. We're already somewhat implementing this a little bit with changes potentially to like self-storage and things like that. That just gives Planning Commission. Use-specific regulations tend to be very specific, and this just allows Planning Commission a little bit more flexibility. And then allow accessory buildings in the side yard in the industrial district, subject to administrative review and approval. A good example of this, VCon just came in with one, and they've built their building pretty much, it has a lot of back to front frontage, which pretty much the whole thing is taken up from front to back, and the side yard is where a lot of the action needs to happen, and this would allow businesses to add accessory buildings. We created the whole new innovation district for mixed employment, office and manufacturing together, based on location, quality of place, and supportive business environment, and we added draft language to create that district. A good example of where we're hoping to implement this is potentially along Miller Road corridor, along 48 here, maybe an overlay for certain property owners if they're willing to do it on the West Main Street area. And then another area we'd like to encourage is on the I-71 corridor. And this would allow a lot more uses than just the general commercial that we have here, a little bit of mix of some of the best qualities we have in Kingsview Drive that could carry over into this district. So residential standards, the zoning code amendments, reduce gross density. It was net, and this is bringing it down a little bit. So back in the day, we had it at, it was net, so it would take out things such as road right-of-ways and other setbacks and things like that. And so that allowed the density that we have to equal, like right now it's equals exactly 3.5 times the square footage of the property equals exactly an acre, which is really, once you put roads in on our 20% open space requirement, is almost, you can't meet that number of density. So this brings it back into line. And it's a small reduction overall for each one of the areas. Developments occurring along identified city trailway shall construct and dedicate a 10 feet wide bike trail from one side of the development to the other to connect to existing or planned trail networks. We'll see a little bit of an example with this with Monarch's development along Miller Road. Consider allowing private streets to qualify as right-of-way frontage. We didn't really have this in this one, but it's something to consider. It's another thing that we're looking at with this development that we're seeing tonight. Accessory uses and associated impervious surfaces shall not exceed 80% of the rear yard. Currently, we don't really have any restrictions on that, and what we're tending to see is drainage issues. When you take up a whole yard with so much impervious surface, the neighbors are the ones who tend to see the impact of that. One thing, permit attached decks 15 feet from the rear property line instead of 25 feet if the rear property line faces an HOA preserved green space, or if the deck is no more than 30 inches above grade. Another one, this is kind of a benefit for folks, is we just have people who are on a hillside, they're out of a walkout basement, and maybe their house was built right up to that 25-foot line or 30-foot line, and they need to put a deck or want to put a deck, and they're restricted by that 25 feet. This would allow them to go up to 15 feet, so long as it's not impacting a surrounding neighbor. I think the provision was in there so that you're not on your second story staring down at your neighbor there, but when you're looking at green space that's preserved, or you're not above 30 inches, it feels like we can have it a little bit closer to concrete, which is not permitted. You don't even need a permit for concrete. So also community requested residential guidelines. So I'm assuming that's what some folks are here, but I mean, the community did really, we're giving some, we hope, and then we're restricting some or asking for some. The community requested residential guidelines, and when the example, like the consultant gave, it's a book, I mean, a real book. Like we're talking pages and pages. We tried to work with what the community said and get it to about 3 pages of provisions, and that's kind of what you're seeing. So vinyl siding shall be maintained, siding shall be cleaned, painted, or replaced when deterioration, fading, or cracking occurs, but we just don't have that in there now. All houses, a minimum of 8 feet high masonry building materials, unless more than 75% cement board siding, and no exposed concrete foundations over 1.5 feet. And this is on new construction for those. Permit 2-family dwellings as a conditional use in the R1U. Multifamily is already permitted, so for some reason two-family was missed back in the day. R1CC, minimum setbacks may be reduced to 0 foot along the common wall. This is already permitted somewhat through that district, but that's why we've been seeing some of these PUDs, like the Toll House Farm ones, because it's not directly permitted within our table of uses. Architectural detail of primary entrance for urban standards, and then a focus on pedestrians, allow a little narrower road widths when it's in an urban area, and then driveways no wider than 20 feet when in the front yard, and driveways shall not exceed greater than 50% of the lot frontage. That's kind of that paired patio. So currently, we actually have more of a restrictive version of this. This actually increases the lot frontage instead of building frontage, so that actually increases the amount of pavement that can allow, but it's more realistic with what's getting developed. Larger lot developments during the rural transition. This is kind of new developments on the outskirts of the city, and it was said that should prioritize buffering in existing residents and protection of natural resources. So for all new subdivisions, and this is kind of in our R1B, R1A, and RR, and an option on R1C. For new subdivisions, a staggered row of trees shall be planted on berms, a minimum of 4 feet in height, a minimum of 50% or 50-foot open space with mounding and trees required along primary roadways. This avoids the double frontage lots. Cook Road's a good example of almost an exaggeration of where the lots are right up to the street, and it's something we're trying to avoid. Subdivision entrances shall be designed with open space, landscaping, and monument features. The countryside's a good example. And then provide Planning Commission the ability to approve greater design options for subdivision entrances. Right now, we're a little restrictive on that. So with that, staff is, actually Planning Commission recommended approval based on the consideration of the, that it's consistent with the Lebanon Comprehensive Plan. And with that, I can take any questions.
So now we can open it up to the public to come and speak to these text amendments. So if you're here to speak to this public hearing, please come to the microphone and state your name and address, and we'll go from there.
Hi, most of you know me. I'm Chris Pernice with Monarch Homes. I'll give our model address right now. The decorated model in Lebanon is 355 North Church Drive up in Revere Run. Thanks for having us this evening. Wanted to just speak a little bit about more of the new home construction, the new zoning text amendments. You know, the first point I would make is that you know, some of the text amendments themselves are a little bit maybe vague or open to interpretation. Others are, you know, kind of more than what, say, other municipalities are requiring, you know, kind of limiting the open market. So, for instance, you know, the masonry standard or hardy plank, you know, there's a lot of homes already built in Lebanon that weren't subject to that standard. For instance, you know, Countryside, Revere's Run, Garfield Park, there's a lot of nice communities that don't have that restriction. Some of those homes are built with brick or stone on the rears and sides, and some weren't, but that was up to more of the free market to determine that, whether they wanted to spend that $40,000 or $50,000 in their kitchen, bathrooms, you know, flooring, those sorts of things, versus having to spend that on, you know, on those other amenities on the exteriors. You know, some of the development standards as well, you know, are just kind of a little vague, like, you know, the part about having a boulevard. I don't know that this wasn't in detail, but something about there's a boulevard entry required, and it was mentioned that 12-foot on center trees being planted. I just think in the future, you know, it's going to limit development within the city of Lebanon. One thing that Scott asked me to be a part of back, and I appreciate you doing that, back in 2018 in July, was there was a City of Lebanon Standards Review Committee to review the standards at that time, because, you know, for the before that, to my knowledge, the last 8 to 10 years, there was no new residential development in the city limits. There was a lot going on. We were building in South Lebanon and Mainville. There's a lot that was going on at Shaker Run at the time, which is in Turtle Creek Township. And so that committee was a great opportunity for us kind of as a team, a private-public team, to say, hey, let's put everything on the table and see what is it that maybe, allowing us to not get development into the city. So at that time, by December, we had a nice list. I think it was 4 to 6 meetings. We even had Monroe there as kind of a benchmark, so you could benchmark some of the surrounding communities. And so my recommendation would be to go back to something like that. I don't think that was the silver bullet necessarily, but I think it did definitely make a big difference, is having, versus maybe a consultant, suggesting those, maybe benchmark neighboring communities, because there will be, I think there will be long-term impacts of, we may not see it right away, but down the road as developers and builders are looking to invest in the city versus surrounding communities that we're competing with. I'd like us to get more, more homes and folks in here and give people an option to build a new home in the city of Lebanon. So that's all I had.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Chris.
Yes, my name is Scott Dries. I'm with Dries Homes. I'm a land acquisition manager. I'm also on the Ohio Valley Development Council, and I sit on the board of directors at the HBA as well. So I want to echo a lot of Chris's concerns. One, I find concerning that there was once a time when there was some input from those developers, those companies that are investing in this community and doing these developments which are affected by this ordinance. The Ohio Valley Development Council would love to renew that and to do that type of review for what you all are considering passing today. And I think it's important that you all do so because, as Chris said, it's going to really cost the customers. One, it's going to cost them on many of these items in their wallets. It's going to drive up the home cost in Lebanon. In addition to that, it's really kind of robbing them in some form of their, buying power, their consumer values. You're telling them, hey, what you should value is brick on your home. It's going to be required. When truthfully, we're seeing more and more that consumers aren't valuing that. They want to put money into their kitchen, into their backyards, items like that. I believe more in a free market where the consumer would get to pick items such as that. And that's just not just on the brick requirement, but there's talk about exposed foundations and a couple other items in here throughout. There's some very good items. I don't want to go through each one because I only have 3 minutes, but there are some serious things to consider here. Like he said, I'm very concerned about the broadness of language. A lot of the stuff that's in here I see in other cities for a planned unit development, but to put that in a specific, just a straight residential community, I think goes a little bit too far. Things like requiring parks and plazas in a residential development. I see that in other communities requiring that in planned unit developments, but not residential, just straight zoning, if you will. I used an example in talking with Chris today. Let's say you have a cul-de-sac. You have a simple cul-de-sac street. You have 10 homes. In this, now you'd be required you already lose a lot for your stormwater management. Now you're going to lose another lot for the park and plaza. Not only that, but you can't start your homes for 200 feet because you have to have a boulevard front entry. Okay, so that community is never going to be developed. And the Envision plan talks numerous times about affordability and how great it is that people can come to Lebanon because it has affordable housing. And because of that, they can open up their small business and they can have a work from home culture. Well, these communities are going to be too expensive, quite frank, for those people to move in to those communities if those communities are built at all in Lebanon. Again, like I said, I'm concerned with the lack of public-private, if you will, involvement in, considering passing this today. And I think you need to talk with some of the people that invest in these developments because, the Envision plan talks how only recently has Lebanon seen a really big spike in single-family homes investment. And, that also kind of coincides with this recent heat up of the market. It mentioned that there's been...
Scott, real quick, could you just round up your final points? Your 3 minutes is up.
Yes. My final point is that I believe that you all should table this discussion. You should meet with developers such as Chris, the Ohio Valley Development Council, go over, some of these points, specifically some of these points that seem a bit too broad and need to be specified, and then make an informed decision. Table discussion today, let's have a discussion and go from there.
I appreciate that
Thank
feedback.
you.
Thank you.
How are you? My name's Anthony DeBerna. I live in 325 Miller Road. I just want to piggyback on what Greg was showing. First of all, I think it's kind of ironic that we celebrated trees earlier and we're discussing something that tears them down to build homes, but kind of ironic. I think we're in a unique position here in Lebanon. I'm a home builder in the building industry. I think because Mason has kind of already pretty much sold their soul as far as just to put up as many homes as possible, and that's what they are looked at as more of a P&G hub. We have this transition where we are moving into Springboro. Springboro is very nice. They've obviously they have created a lot of restrictions as far as the exteriors and what new builders have to do. I think that we need to be better as far as not looking at, more in particular, I'm not just singling Chris and Monarch out, but just in general, if we're going to do this, I think the requirements of parks and walkways, those things are very important, and the trees, natural things that make people feel like they're not living in an urban developed area. But the requirements are, we should be setting ourselves apart in our city. The cost difference between a vinyl siding product compared to a fiber cement, it's not as exaggerated as what home builders are going to let on. The fact is, fiber cement or brick is maintenance free. That's what you want your new homes to be moving towards. Things that have built-in warranties and they prevent bug intrusion, fire retardant, things like that. Things that are going to be around and not deteriorate and show their wear over many years. I just don't think that we need to just say, okay, here's an opportunity, there's a spot of land, make as much money as possible, let's go with a cheaper product, and then we're still gonna charge that same amount that if we did, or if they apply that to the customer. The market right now is willing to take on those costs. Like you will get that. The market is showing that across the board. So there's no reason to bring a cheaper product into this area. I think we need to again, be better. Let's look at these things before we just look at them at dollars and cents and make sure we're making the right decisions for our community moving forward. Because it's the restrictions are good. I think that you need to start somewhere, and this isn't an extension that I'll use the Monarch Crumbs. This isn't an extension of Revere's Run or another subdivision. This is a chance to kind of set the tone for moving forward as far as this is the product that we're going to be offering here in Lebanon. You can get these homes. They're not all just like every other neighborhood. So that's
Thank you,
my
Anthony.
piece. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Realtor with Keller Williams. Some of you guys all know me. I think you've spent a lot of time doing this, and this is a lot of work to re-walk through the zoning code, but it's a lot of stuff. And it's kind of like you've got the entire set of the alphabet. There's a lot of things, and I don't say throw out the whole thing with the bathwater, but there's a lot of things that are containing in there. One of the things that I saw, just even reviewing it, is the 1.5 feet of concrete. Well, if you go look at what Union Village is and what they're producing, and we've had lots of stories around that, half of those houses wouldn't be approved because they have more concrete showing than 1.5 feet. And there's some reasons sometimes to do that based off of drainage. So I think we were doing a great job pushing developers to walk in and do a PUD on development. And so in the PUD, then we can require some of those zoning restrictions. And, Greg's been great about working up. We've created a friendly place for people to come into Lebanon and look at building now. Some of that's been changed through process, politics, people, staffing and things. I think we're now where the builders obviously coming in here, they want to come in here. And now we're putting some really, really tight restrictions on that. And I don't think that's what we want to do in Lebanon. We want to invite those people to come in, sit with staff, sit with planning, sit with process, and try to walk through and add. And I'm afraid that when we do this, we may start presenting ourselves as, hey, this is the city that's extremely restrictive. And if a builder comes in, they're going to say, it's not worth going here. I'm going to go somewhere else. And 10 years ago, we had that. That was where nobody wanted to come into Lebanon and develop because the builders wanted to ignore it because we had issues and great staff and things like that. Nobody wanted to come in because the answer was always no. Now our answer is, let's talk about it. And I think this puts a little bit of too many no's out there. Puts a lot of stops that we're not even going to get the people looking, in that scenario. So I think it needs to be, I think you've had some good suggestions to maybe take a look a little bit more at some of the details, get some more input, and before you make a decision on something like this. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else like to speak to these? Any comments from council at this time?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Yeah, okay. You're a builder,
I have two things. One, I have a question for Greg on signage. Where do murals fall in signage? I know that's come up in the past. Anybody that's been through Franklin, they've got just killer. I still think half the time they're real, the way they look on their walls. But is a mural considered a sign? Like if the museum or something wanted to do something along the way, or like the one side of the, I'd always thought it would be cool to have a mural on the side of the old Miller's Antique Mall where the train would come in. What are they considered?
Yes, currently murals would fall under like our sign code, and so would be restricted like any other sign to the square footage that's permitted on the building. So we don't have any separate language specifically related to murals.
How hard would that be if someone really wanted to push that to make that allowable? What would be involved? If this is passed, it becomes a sign. You couldn't do a mural under the current sign ordinances.
Under the current code, it's potential that it could fall into the variance process because it's a dimensional issue. So
Okay.
really what you're asking to do is increase the amount of signage that you're permitted on a wall.
Okay.
So right now it's like 150 square feet, but it's dependent on the linear footage of the building. So if you just have a 60-foot long building, it's only allowed 60 feet. We do have different provisions on different sides of the building. I mean, staff has been a little bit more permissive, I think, of that, recognizing that different sides of the building are still visible from the road. So like, for instance, like the McDonald's will have an extra sign facing two different directions, or even the Burger King that's coming up has more signage on different parts that you can see from the road right of ways. But it's still under the same provision of the linear foot equals square foot.
Okay.
I think, Greg, is it typical for communities that do allow murals to have that as almost a separate section of their code? Because I think certainly you get into, whether or not you want to have any input on the aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of once you open the door,
Right.
you open the door. So I think other communities have, if they are going to look at that, have really treated that as a separate section of the code. and, determine whether or not they wanted to permit it.
It'd be interesting to know, like Miamisburg and Franklin, somehow they manage that, because their murals are beautiful. I think they enhance the downtown. They're really nice, so. And then my other question for this section was the electronic signs. Like you mentioned, like the one up at the Y. How allowable are those signs? Like you can't have one downtown, correct?
Correct. Currently, the central business districts and all residential districts outside of, I guess they've been applied to conditional use for places of worship that have been permitted, but outside, like the general business district, they're permitted.
Okay.
And they're just supposed to be part of the sign. Like currently, they're 50% of the sign that they can equal. So, but what I'm finding, and we work with Kerry from Claire Signs on this, and he just says the new technology, one of the small signs you can have is 17.6 square feet is how it, so instead of 2 by 8, they're more like going like 3 by.
Square.
Yeah, 3 feet by whatever that dimension, a little over that. So that's what he talked about, the new technology, where it's real digital before. So that's where we got that distance. And then the other thing they were doing is, in order to get that 50% threshold, they were trying to increase the signage area above it. And so it seemed like we were arbitrarily making them make the actual non-digital portion bigger just to justify that 50%. So that's why we bumped it up to 65% to allow a little bit more flexibility.
Okay, thank you. Those were, and then secondly, just to make thoughtful remarks on the developers and the builders that are here. There's a lot that I could say, but I want to make, I don't know if it would come out in the right way without thinking more on it. I live in a 200-year-old home that I am sure when it was built, people questioned, why are you building it so well, and why are you putting so much into it? Why don't you build a log cabin? It's cheaper, the wood's right on your land. 200 years later, that house is as solid as it was, when it was built. I currently work on homes in Lebanon that are 20 years old, 22 years old, built with the standards of the time, that I marvel at how cheap and how unbelievably poor constructed they are. Some of the products that are used on the outside that are rotting and falling off, and these are very expensive homes. These are countryside and some other subdivisions that I've worked in. I agree with a lot. It does add cost to a home. However, I feel that if people want to live in Lebanon, there will be a price to pay to live in Lebanon. That's the way it's going to be. What people want to do on the inside of their home is up to them. To sacrifice quality on the outside so people can have a nicer kitchen or nicer bathroom. I don't agree with that at all, because 99.9% of us will never see that kitchen or bathroom, but we're going to see the outside of that home forever. And we can all pinpoint neighborhoods in this community right now that have been allowed to build when the wave came in 1959, and they built all the brick ranches and all the squatty fourplexes and those things, all the way through subdivisions that were just thrown up literally overnight. And now you drive through those subdivisions, and like I said, they're barely 25 years old, and they look like they're ready to come down, some of them. So I think maybe the current person that wants to come and buy and live in Lebanon may not appreciate the efforts that the community has put into increasing our standards. But I think the people down the road, 25, 30, 50, 60 years from now, that come in to buy those homes that are built with much better quality, more time and more energy, they're the ones that will be appreciating it. It may be hard for this group generation to afford it. I can't afford half the homes that I work on. But I want to put in the quality. I don't want to cut corners. So I feel that the community spoke in the changing of these plans. This wasn't what we talked about. This was a group of people said, this is how we want Lebanon, and that's the group we represent. I fully understand developers wanting to save on the bottom line. That's your business. I get that 100%. And however, our community is what spoke, and this is what they said they want, and I feel that's what we really need to represent. Houses are going to go up. People are going to find a way. They're putting houses in places I can't believe they even fit houses. I came from California, and it's unbelievable where they squeeze houses in out there. If you want to live in a community, you're going to find a way to afford to live here. So, like I said, I still have some thoughts on it, but I feel my legacy, I don't want to come back. I won't be here in 60 years, 75 years, and have people go, what were they thinking? Why in the world would they ever let something like that be built? I say that, and these guys have heard me say it 100 times. I have 4 duplexes right beside me that don't fit that street. I have gorgeous mansions across the street. I live in a 200-year-old, beautifully restored home, and I'm right beside duplexes. Now, whatever council said that was okay in planning, it's ridiculous. It doesn't fit Lebanon. It doesn't fit the street. I don't want to be the council person that someone says, what were they thinking? So that's just my take on it for right now, anyway.
Thanks, Jeff.
Quick question, Greg. Excuse me. I guess going back before Planning Commission, some of the committees that some of the builders brought up, that was a mix of public and I guess some of the builders that were going together and going through all this, talking with Scott as far as why are people not building here? And you have to forgive me because I wasn't part of that. Maybe I should have been, but I got 4 kids and I was oblivious then. There's my excuse. Did some of these different discussion points filter in, or were they weeded out, or were these suggestions? Was this more of what the public was asking for? Or I guess can you just give us maybe a 60-second background on how some of these restrictions came about?
Yes, so
certainly not to put you on the spot.
Oh, sure, no problem. The discussion that they were having was before I was here at the city.
Yeah, maybe before you answer, let me
Yes,
jump
if you
in.
have the history on that.
So that process, that discussion was 3 or 4 years ago. It was focused on construction standards, roads, utilities, actual site development standards. So that, that effort was an effort to review our design and construction standards that's maintained by our city engineers. And so it was, an effort to bring in other cities, leaders, the development community, but in no way did that committee look at the zoning code and the text amendments and the building design standards. I think that was to a significant degree kind of what the Envision Lebanon process was. Okay. So two very different pathways. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, and to kind of couple with that, the Envision Lebanon with the community meetings that we had and that year and a half long process, we heard common themes. I mean, and we couldn't hear more about community character and the common theme that thread throughout it. So, and if you can see some of the provisions, some of them are a give towards business development, a little bit more towards the commercial aspect, because right now we don't really have any residential standards at all. So for individual homes, we've got our base standards that set front yard setback, rear yard setback, and we do have already an open space requirement of 20%. That's part of our developments. What we wanted to do with that, with the parks and open space, was to see that 20% utilized in a way that functioned for the community. So either through preservation of trees, and the other thing that partially can do is use as a gateway feature, or use as that 50-foot buffer that we're talking about. So there's ways to utilize the existing code, and that's what it was designed for. So using that 20% so that it impacts and helps the community as much as possible instead of just an arbitrary placement of the 20%.
I went to many of the Envision master planning and the comprehensive plannings there, and some of these, not quite verbatim, but are translated through our city staff here on A2B with not having 3 houses in a row of the same identical house. That was mentioned. I heard people in our community say that. Same with the garages matching the rest of the facade. And as Mr. Rose said, the type of green space within communities. These were mentioned over and over with many, many different people from the community expressing that. And I believe some developers and others came to these meetings as well. So we did try to have this as open to the public for this public-private partnership as was requested. We didn't, so I think this has come. I do take Mr. Bisman's comment on A2D, that if there's a reason for the exposed stone, exposed concrete, if there's a drainage reason, then that needs to be responded to. Practicality has to come before aesthetics or safety or anything like that. So if maybe an amendment there for A2D saying with proper recognition of drainage concerns or other types of issues there, so that we do make strong buildings, strong homes for our communities into the future. And that's what this public hearing is about, is we want to make this better. And so we want to get the feedback from people and the know. And we've tried to have this open communication for the last 18 months, 2 years on this. And if we tweak it another 2 degrees better tonight, great. So.
I have a question on, there was on the parking, one of the parking text amendments, do we have any provisions for shared use? I've done a development where, we had retail and some residential back behind, and I know how difficult it is sometimes for commercial properties, especially like restaurants, if they're right next to each other, having a shared use ability where there's some formulas that are out there. And I did not get a chance to look through there and see if there was a shared use component in there.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, that's where the 50% comes from, that the 50% reduction. It used to say there could be up to a 50% reduction approved by Planning Commission if there was a shared use provision in there. So that provision of shared use is still in there. But what we were trying to do is also allow even more flexibility, that it just didn't need to be tied to the shared use parking. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the goal. If you look at, obviously, our city and a lot of cities, somewhat planners were a little bit to blame for the overabundance of parking lots that were required as we were out there counting spaces on these structures and telling them to add more when it was just taking up more land. And so I think that's where we're really trying to say, let the developer come in, tell us what they need for their specific use, and see if we can work with that. If we need to then say, Planning Commission says, hey, add a couple more spots because it seems like we need more, I'd rather be in that sort of boat than mandating additional parking. And there is one provision in here that states related to our shared parking where before we always required that 10-foot separation. There's a small one in here that just says where it's shared parking into a common access driveway, the 10 feet is not required. It can be 0 lot for that, but where places where it could fit in as 10-foot buffer between those uses is still required, yes.
And then there was it flashed in there pretty quick about modified use, and there was a specification for modified use, and I just wondered if when there's a modified use requested, if that is considered a conditional use, so proper notification is provided for, surrounding property owners and such.
That modified use was originally created as, let me see if it's, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So the modified use for use-specific regulations. And this is something that it's a careful balance between watering down some of our provisions, but also allowing some flexibility for situations. It is something that could be potentially utilized in the residential thing as well to give Planning Commission a little bit more flexibility. So right now, currently, we use it for our architectural design guidelines, where it says 75% of the building. It talks about building orientation, all these different things in that whole chapter. It allows Planning Commission to give a little bit more flexibility to those for unique designs that may not fit every standard for that. We've also sort of found that for our self-storage and for the canopy in front of structures, when Planning Commission decides that a specific regulation is almost too restrictive and the applicant does other things and meets all other types of the zoning code and maybe does things to mitigate why that use-specific standard was there, it gives Planning Commission flexibility to to modify that.
So,
But it doesn't go through a variance process.
Okay.
It's called like an alternative design.
so my thought is catching a property owner off guard that thought, let's say, a canopy out in front of a building, well, that developer or that owner wants to make a change in zoning plan, think it's a good idea, maybe everybody thinks it's a good idea, but someone who believed that wasn't going to occur, how would they know that you've got someone that wants to modify something there? Is my thought. I don't know how that would, you know, will that ever happen? I don't know, but.
I'm not sure. I mean, we would have to almost change it to the modified use would have to be somehow conditional. And if they were interested in applying for that modification of the use, then we would have to send out conditional use to surrounding owners or something. That's the only way I could think that would comply with that, but whether that would be too onerous, I'm
Right,
not sure.
right,
It's just something
right.
we'd have to look at.
I have a question for Mr. Dries. Certainly not to put you on the spot as well. So I'm not a real estate agent and I'm not a builder. You wouldn't want me building anything. I can operate a hammer, but it's not pretty. How do these, in your best opinion, how do some of these restrictions, I hate to use the word restrictions, that's negative, but I guess more guidelines, how about that? How do these guidelines affect the cost of building? You know, is this a 3% or a 10% or a 20% increase? And then I guess a precursor to that, where do we line up now as a community in overall cost compared to some of our neighboring communities? Obviously not, maybe not the Heritage Club. That's a dumb example, but maybe like Miamisburg, Springboro, Monroe, maybe the north side of Mason, Deerfield Township area.
Yeah. Counter here. It's going to be really hard for me to just give a dollar amount because it obviously is going to depend on type of building, type of lot. But I think when you boil down to these costs beginning at the development phase, and you know, some of the community standards that are in there, some of the community standards that already exist, you know, it's going to be a pretty decent percentage compared to those neighboring communities that you just mentioned. And then you get to the house and you're requiring those materials, which I might add, I just want to point out, you know, with the brick and everything, you know, it's going to be built quality, at least for Dries. I can't speak for everyone. No matter what, you know, we just see, when I was talking earlier, you know, we just see buyers prefer lately a craftsman style, which often includes the siding feature over the brick, more brick accents than 75%. And, you know, we're finding in Mason and other areas that that's actually what most customers are seeking out. So now requiring the 75% brick, you know, there's 10 grand, and then if it's, you know, brick wrapped, then, you know, another couple, 6 grand, 8 grand, you know. So it can be pretty significant. Again, once you start compiling all these things, it creates a pretty drastic difference, especially when you look at some of the neighboring communities. Turtle Creek Townships, I think a great example, still Lebanon schools. I think people are choosing to invest there over some communities here.
Thank you. Thank you.
A follow-up question on that. You mentioned the different styles, but I believe there's some variability here allowing for hardy plank, and I think that's just a fill-in. There's other types of...
Cement board.
Right. We don't... In the final, we might not have a brand name in there, but the substance of hardy plank. So that type of craftsman would still be accessible.
Yes, it could still be achieved through a hardy plank. Okay. Correct. A lot of communities allow hardy plank on the front while having vinyl siding on the side. Unless what we often see, and we do this in our communities, if it's a high visible lot, if it's at the corner, it has to be hardy plank or brick wrap no matter what. But if it's a low visibility lot, there, you know, we can do vinyl siding, and that provides pretty decent value for the customer and doesn't really impact the aesthetics of the community all that much. Thank you.
I think one of the things that, thank you so much. One of the things that, I guess just thinking out loud is I hear all these conversations, and we really want to maintain the quality and the character of our community. We don't want to be restrictive. We want to try to keep it as affordable as possible without compromising our look, our feel, that sort of thing. We want to be welcoming to folks to be able to come here and raise families and live and work and worship and that sort of thing. There's such a fine line with saying that, we want to be the next New Albany versus, the track home where you have to use a shoehorn. One of my college buddies, his first home's on the southwest side of here over towards Butler County, and he had to paint his door a different color because he'd come home at night and go to the wrong house because they all look the same. We don't want that either. So I appreciate the work and the thought and the options that's gone into this. I know that some of the areas seem restrictive and maybe even punitive, and hopefully that's not the that's not the goal. That's not the intent behind this. I guess to echo a couple of things. I don't know if it was you that said this, Scott, or maybe if it was Adam. We want a good product that we're proud of down the road. And I know we can't necessarily control all that. That's obviously consumer-driven and market-driven. But I feel a lot of these, from the 100,000-foot view are good, and they're good improvements, and it's moving in the right direction.
I would add one of a book I'm reading. You do not rise to your goals, you fall to your habits, you fall to your standards and your systems. And so I think that's probably poignant, right, with this conversation. The standards that we have are what, that's what everyone will be required to do. If they're lower standards, we'll have lower quality simply because it's a cost factor. So the community, the Envision Lebanon, I recall that the ratios in there stated that we had pretty good ratios with lower income housing, mid-market, higher level, that we had a pretty good ratio right now. I don't think these text amendments and the code requirements that we're talking about are going to, certainly not going to lower that. I think it's going to help lean into those ratios and keep that floor for Lebanon for the future, like Scott, you talked about.
And I think too that, because nobody wants to call out any developer or any subdivision or any home particularly, and really the kind of the elephant in the room is it's not what we want to do, it's what we don't want to do. I mean, we can all just sit back and think, I don't want another subdivision that looks like that, but nobody's going to say that up here. It's not fair, it's not right to say. But that's where I'm at right now, where it's what I don't want to see anymore. And I can privately take you on a tour and show each one of you why, and you would probably all agree. And again, affordability is relative to some point, and just building anything anymore. I don't know how you guys stay in business, truthfully. I mean, I'm a small builder, and I die every time I go to Home Depot anymore with the prices. But that's not an excuse to reduce quality and standards. It's just we'll just have to rise up to meet that standard. But yeah, that's what I was just thinking while we were all talking. It's really not what I want to do. It's what I don't want to do. What I don't want to see in Lebanon.
I feel like these have been all very good comments and a good conversation. Adam, you brought up the process that went behind Envision Lebanon and the amount of time that we spent. Chris, I'm almost positive you were involved in that too. A lot of community meetings, And I think a lot of these things are, you said they weren't verbatim, but a lot of them I can recall people talking through these things. And I think an overall raising the standard was, raising the tide was a very overarching theme. And I think that the plan speaks to that. And I think the majority of these amendments speak to that as well. The one thing that kind of jumped out to me is and Scott, I talked to you about this, the 8 feet, the masonry wrap and the hardy plank wrap. And I guess what I'd like to hear is, I mean, I know how the process works, but maybe you could verbalize it for everybody watching and hear of how the PUD process would work underneath this code and maybe some of the gives and takes that could happen in regards to certain things that developers have questions about.
So we have been doing a lot of PUDs
We have, yeah.
lately, and you'll see them here tonight. Currently, the city, because of its lack of residential guidelines, we have no leverage, really.
Yeah.
So we are encouraging some PUDs so that we at least have a minimum of input into what the design is. So a good example of that, there's a certain development that's going on right now, and I can see the permit in front of me when I'm at my desk, and it's on a corner lot, and you look at it, and you're just like, you're gonna see the side of that house right there. And so I call up the developer, the home builder, and say, hey, it's a corner lot, could you please, add a little bit of accent right there? And the conversation is over before it started. They're just like, why are you calling me? It meets zoning. Almost like, don't call again about this subject. So we have no leverage at this point. So we're coming into these PUD processes like pretty low. And that's where even if we did a design modification with some of these, we would at least have a tiny bit of leverage on it. And part of what the brick came through, and it's not completely required, and I encourage to open up a dialogue. Chris will know that I'm a very reasonable individual, and we could look at these. When I look at what we're talking about here on this, we've got 3 or 4 provisions in here that we're talking about through all of, and really the residential guidelines that we're talking about through the public at home, they're a page. So, I mean, as much as they're fairly minimal. So we just want to establish some base standards so that we have something to work with. And the brick came in that Councilman Norris brought it up in different things of what looks like Lebanon. And we always look at our downtown for reference and the brick styles that are there and or stone styles for different things. So, and we heard that so much through the process to carry on the Lebanon theme for new development. We've gotten away from that a little bit on some, and we just want to make sure that at least we have some leverage to circle back to that. And maybe there's a combination where it doesn't need to be 8 feet everywhere. Maybe certain on the sides it drops down, and in the rear it drops down even more. So I think there's flexibility on that, but at least this is a good starting point.
Well, I think to that point, Greg, I mean, there are opportunities through a PUD process to make those modifications, similar to how we're making those modifications now by getting some standards in place. If there was a desire to, reduce that requirement for some reason, the PUD process is still available for developers to go that route.
Exactly.
Right. We just went through a PUD change that changed the setback.
Right.
So that.
I specifically to that the hardy plank concept. The other thing I'm looking at is, so hardy plank needs to be painted, needs to be maintained. If a homeowner is looking for less maintenance, and the only reason I kind of zoned in on this was because I've been pricing this stuff out myself, and there are premium vinyl products that I would think would meet that requirement and that look that we're looking for, that have like a 2x lifetime warranty on color, 180 mile an hour wind rating, things like that. Would that be something that would we would be able to include, so it's not as restricted as cement board and brick. Is that a,
We can look at that.
yeah,
Yeah, I can definitely look at it. And really, we're expecting that vinyl outside of that first floor wrap, that it would be vinyl for the most part. So still at least over 50% of the house, if not with the eaves that are going up in the roof line, you're still going to have a majority of the house is going to be vinyl in essence. It's more that first floor wrap.
got it.
And like I said, there might be variability that the vinyl comes down to 4 feet on the side or something different. I think we're just looking for that vinyl not to go extend all the way to the ground level right there. Just wash up, rain, anything onto the house, and variability, I think, was the other thing that we've been missing on some of these other developments where it's literally just the vinyl and then some small window surround, and that's the dominant thing that you see, especially on corner lots.
Very good, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Greg, is it possible maybe on some of our smaller developments, I know a lot of times the margins are tight, and the majority of the profit is made maybe on the back end, so to speak, when a development is finishing up, so to speak. Is it possible to maybe have a little bit more lenient, maybe that's not the best word, maybe more of a compromise, so to speak, on, hey, we can only get 14 houses in here. We need to make money on this, but we don't want to charge an exorbitant price. Would there be a way for us to maybe do something like what Mr. Dries talked about, where in the more of the frontage or maybe on the corner, hey, these types of guidelines are going to be needed, but maybe in the back, you've got a unit that's maybe facing a green space or woods or whatever that's not near as noticeable. We can allow that builder to have a little bit more of a relaxed rule, so to speak. It's more of an affordable home for the people that want to move in there, but yet they would still be able to, I guess what's the word, finish that subdivision up, so to speak. So we don't have I guess where I'm going is a 5 or 6 acre lot that's sitting there, and all the builders are like, yeah, we can't touch that with a 10-foot pole because there's no money to be made on that.
Yeah.
Or would that be where the PUD would come in?
No, I
PUD.
think we could definitely look at each of the provisions too, or at least on a couple of them. Some of them are a little, like you said, the entrance are a little bit larger in scale on their focus, and they're designed to be for larger developments, and come up with a number that makes sense. And I think that's through the dialogue. It wouldn't like apply to, Chris's sort of development for 12 homes right there, but maybe the 50-foot separation so that the houses were not backing up to the street, or there's a design option of the PUD that faces the houses towards the street. So that's kind of that. We'll see a little bit of some of what we're talking about with the map amendment coming up on these, and you'll see some of these in action a little bit. So,
But I think that also speaks to the PUD process that we can go through, and we can detail those things specifically.
yeah. I mean, the main purpose that we're doing is there's urban standards and residential standards. If it's urban standards, it means it's probably closer to Lebanon, and we're allowing a pretty high density. We want it to fit in with Lebanon, and we feel like there's enough density that the quality should be there. When it's suburbia, I kind of want it to look like suburbia, or we all do. That's what we heard, is we want it to transition out into Turtle Creek Township. So we did want those entrances, and we heard that over and over, how we wanted these subdivisions to tie into Turtle Creek, and really those entrances and these features that we're talking about are what will tie Lebanon's rural fringe into our surrounding neighbor of Turtle Creek, and kind of blend that rural atmosphere and farm atmosphere into the city.
It'll give the community texture and more products to choose from as people move throughout the city. Absolutely.
And there comes a time when it's like it's just not affordable to do. If I have 6 acres and the standards are going to create where I can't make money, I don't build. I mean, or we can, as kind of what you were saying, like, what was that 6 quote you said, or that statement you remember?
we don't rise to our goals, we fall to our systems is what it is.
Yeah, so we have a standard, and if it just doesn't work, it doesn't work. The landowner doesn't get to sell his land, and the developer doesn't get to build. Or we just keep changing the standard, and we put houses on 30-foot lots like they're doing out at Union Village, and we just make it so tight. We can do that, if that's what the community's calling for and saying we want row houses, we want that Boston look or whatever. But it gets to a point where if it just isn't going to work, then it just isn't going to work, and that's the free market. If someone wants to pay a lot of money and buy the land and put up a big house on it, they can, or because 4 houses aren't going to fit. I mean, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Scott, to your point too, I mean, we've talked about slowing growth, and I mean, unfortunately, sometimes that's going to happen too. I mean, I'm grateful for there being some regulations as somebody who lives in a community where there may not have been at one point, and we see the downfalls of some of the things that have happened, and you know, things like the brick around. Hopefully that helps them not have a neighborhood that everyone's houses have ants and things like that. You know, I grew up in a brick house. We didn't have that, you know, and that's something that we all experience, and just lots of different things, drainage issues, all sorts of things. So I'm really glad to see a lot of the things that come into place. And like I said, if it slows things down a little bit, you know, maybe that's part of it. And, you know, I kind of see it like, you know, we're not necessarily trying to be more restrictive, but protective. And that's how I would look at it, you know, protecting not just the look of our community, but also the residents and their homes, because, you know, as we know, I mean, I know from personal experience, I know other people do as well, a developer may make the community look a particular way and then be gone in a few years, and there's nobody to go back to. And so if we make decisions now that say, okay, we're holding people accountable to this level, you know, they're going to have to do that regardless if they're going to be in business for 5 years or 50 years.
Yeah. Great comments tonight. Thanks for everybody who came out to speak. Yeah.
I missed, we got off the, I'm Jeff Holloway with on Main Street.
Yes, sir.
We're talking about expanding the downtown business district.
We've got that coming up.
That's next.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We got two more. We got 2 more of these.
Thought you might be here for that, Mr. Raleigh.
Yes. Could I get a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I had one question before. Was there any comment on the innovation districts? Or was it only comment on residential?
Mainly residential.
No, but I was just asking if there was any, because that was another huge thing, as Mr. Rose mentioned.
Yes.
Most of this was on other things, so just excited for that. I guess people are happy with that, so yes. Now I can say yes.
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 Can I get a motion to open the public hearing for the zoning map amendments for the expansion of the central business district?
Second.
Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 So I think 3 public hearings in one night is a record. So Greg, this is you again.
Go, Greg, go. Me again. Okay, so this is the zoning map amendment. This is for the downtown properties. The purpose of this public hearing is to rezone properties adjacent to downtown from residential 1, R1U, to urban, or to central business district, central, or CBD. This was recommended, again, by the Envision Lebanon Comprehensive Plan, so we're really trying to implement the vision within that plan. The subject properties are a mix of institutional buildings, places of worship, community services, and residential properties. This map amendment would increase the usability of the properties while removing many existing nonconformities. A public meeting was held with the property owners on March 9th. This was even after the Envision Lebanon, and we got a mixed reaction to the proposed map amendments. So many of the property owners were excited about the expansion of the central business district, while others expressed concerns about the change. To address their worries, staff reduced the central business district expansion in many areas, And then we also developed a potentially new district called the Central Residential District, and that is going to be at your May public hearing to create this district. The Central Residential District would conditionally permit many of the uses that the property owners sought while eliminating the less desirable uses such as bars, et cetera, and other retail use. One of the other uses that came up frequently was the request to use property as non-owner occupied short-term rentals. That means a short-term rental where you can just rent it out and there's no person who lives in the house. You're just renting it, like an Airbnb of a whole structure. They're only currently permitted in the Central Business District. The new CRD would allow non-owner occupied short-term rentals potentially with specific regulations as well as other compatible uses such as office as a conditional use. City Council also determined that text amendments on short-term rentals should run concurrently with that Central Business District map amendment process to make sure that we're catching all aspects of the topic. That'll also be at a May public hearing as well. So this is what originally was recommended as part of the Envision Lebanon plan. So you can see that the original Central Business District expansion was pretty significant in all areas. The Eagles Lodge is included in this, as really they're in a residential district, but more of a Central Business District type use. So they would like to be included. But this is the beauty of the public process and the input from all of you and everyone else in the population that came to those meetings. What was requested was to reduce the Central Business District expansion to the areas that you see in black. And then even further after Planning Commission, so Planning Commission recommended the map that you currently see here. So it's in theory reviewing the areas in green, approving the areas in black at our public hearing today. However, even since then we've got further public input about concerns about including this area as part of the Central Business District. So staff has reviewed that. And the residential, it's a residential area, and the folks who live in that area would like to keep it residential. The reason it was originally included was the thought of maybe including Barrel House and some of those two businesses up in here. But I think even just the signing provisions that would be restricted slightly in the Central Business District might deter them from wanting to do that. And they have nonconformities in the neighborhood commercial, but I think they'd rather have the nonconformities and go through the variance process than losing their internally illuminated signage. So that really, there's no need to do it. So staff is supportive of having this area transition to green so that it stays residential, but still has a little bit more of the flexibilities that we'll discuss next month. So the short-term rentals, like I said, and the Central Residential District map and text amendments will be before you and Planning Commission next month. And with that, everything we do is based on our criteria for zoning and map amendments. The amendments of these properties meets all the zoning code criteria, and they are recommended as part of the Envision Lebanon Comprehensive Plan. And then Planning Commission recommended approval of the zoning map amendment to extend the Central Business District. However, staff would like to recommend that the map amendment be approved or be recommended for approval, but changing the new street and North Mechanic Street from Central Business District to Central Residential District based on public input.
Greg, could you go back to the map, the aerial view map?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just the areas in black is all that's being considered tonight in terms of actually expansion of the Central Business District.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the ordinance is related to those properties in black.
So just so council knows, the map does not reflect what is currently up there.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Staff is looking for guidance on whether to change the ordinance to remove the new street and the North Mechanic Street based on public input. That would be different than what the Planning Commission recommended.
Absolutely. Yes. Mr. Holland, it's all you.
No, I'm not sure what the benefit of making the Eagles Central Business District. I was really, for what Mr. Norris was saying earlier, with your planning, what was done. You said, you live in a 200-year-old house. And what were they thinking when they built duplexes next to you? Well, we went through the same thing. We live in a 200-year-old house when a previous council allowed Eagles to be built, which was not in the bridge is the end of downtown, and they let that steel building get built, which is the Eagles Club. When we got a bar shoved right down our throat, previous council let it happen, and then they said, oh, well, that was supposed to be a brick building. Well, it's a steel building in a residential neighborhood, and it's just, it's been a blight. So I'm not sure what it gains. The little jog is our house and our neighbor's house. They're already they own another piece of property that they do not take care of. So I'm not sure what that's about. What's the benefit of making that central business district? Clay Street is a blight. I don't know why, that's a question for you, Scott, why no one's driving down Clay Street. We own some property there. We're trying to take care of it.
Yeah.
We own some property we would like to develop on Clay Street, but there's some stuff going on down there that I don't know what's happening. I really don't understand what this current move is about on making this downtown. There was some stuff on the Corwin House years ago that I had an argument with the previous council with. They made, the Corwin House was made commercial property. And after the meeting was adjourned, then they said, oh, is there any parking on Corwin Street? No, there's not any parking on Corwin Street. Fortunately, the engineer's office bought it, so it's not a problem. But that could have been a real problem, making that a commercial building. Corwin Street is not a commercial piece of property, so, I think what you guys are doing tonight as far as increasing your standards is a good thing. I think you do need to raise the bar. You need to look harder and stuff. You need to make the builders, let's build better houses, spend more money and raise the bar, but we need to, what you said, Mr. Norris, let's eliminate some of this crap that took place a long time ago.
Do you have and one, thank you. Your mom started the renovation in the house that I live in, and it's gorgeous. Do you have a question?
Well, I'm not sure why is that becoming central business district? I mean, I guess it's something the Eagles want, but I'm not sure what it's going to change. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's residential.
And the building, I agree with you, the building doesn't fit any way, shape, or form. And nothing against the Eagles, it's just,
it doesn't fit. It should have been stopped 20 years ago.
Can we answer that question?
There's no one on this council that was involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't answer on the history of that. I can't say.
Not the building,
yeah,
why are
the
we?
Eagles, so the Eagles had made a request. Right now, it's a non-conforming use, as you pointed out. It's essentially a commercial type building and business that's in a residential district. So they made the request to rezone that to central business district. Similar to what the city did years ago, kind of on East Main Street. You can kind of see the pink that runs along East Main Street. That was done probably 15 years ago. It would allow them, right now, they're a private club in a sense. The central business district designation could allow them to become more of a public operation, in terms of it being, zoned commercially.
Well, I mean, it screws those residential people there.
I can comment on Clay if you would like, or.
Yeah,
I was going to ask, if you said Clay Street, I wasn't sure.
Clay Street, it's recognized as, he's not kidding, I mean, there's some definite issues on Clay Street, and staff is leaning heavily on that this year.
There's some stuff that's going on Clay Street right now. I don't even know if the building department's involved in it. I mean, there's some stuff getting renovated. I don't even know if they know what's going on. I don't know if it's legal, if it's not legal. There's some houses that are getting remodeled. There's some stuff that's getting half torn down, half not. I have I mean, there's a lot of stuff that ought to just be flat.
Is the tool rental, the old tool, is it empty still? I haven't been down Clay.
It's owned by the Eagles.
Okay.
It's rented by the Eagles.
Okay.
There's the old city garage. I mean, the Eagles own some property there. I own some property on Clay Street. We own both sides of Clay in Maine. Then our house is one back from there. But, we've got investment in the neighborhood, but it's all residential.
Yeah, and Public Works has been out there fixing some of the patches on that street based on recommendation. The house does have a permit, the one that looks like it's half burnt out, half whatever. They do have a permit to redo it because there was a property maintenance violation on it for obvious reasons. From what he has, the permit and what he's proposing there looks very nice. Like he's somehow using the same structure, but it's, I mean, I can send you the plans if I get your things, but it looks nice. The one next door to it was vacant for a while, and then all of a sudden in the last week or two, they are starting to do something. So we're looking into that because I'm not aware, I don't see any permits for that.
Yeah,
that has the sidings.
There's several there's one on one side of the road that's been getting remodeled a little bit.
He has had permits for those, so, and he's putting some investment into the barn and the fencing and all of that. He does have permits for that. So it's,
We've cleaned up the corner considerably.
yes, for sure. We're leaning heavily on it this year.
And the road itself is deteriorating.
That's where the patchwork is a start, and we'll have other, hopefully, discussions on if we can do anything else.
I have a question for you, Greg, or Mr. Rook. I'm not sure which one of you would need to answer it, but to answer his question. So if Eagles wants to be added to, wants to be part of the central business district, and this would allow them to operate in a different way, is it allowable to do something like say, okay, well, if you're going to do that, then maybe here's some other guidelines that you would need to follow that would make it a little bit more amiable to the residents around. I don't know what types of things, but maybe if it's a sound issue or something like that, say, okay, well, if you're going to do that, then this is going to need to be in place so that it fits in more and isn't such an issue in where it is right now to the residents. Is that allowable, possible?
Well, they're not, they would fall under our central business district kind of base zoning, so, from a noise sound issue, we do have code that would speak to that, but rezoning this property to central business district pretty much allows them to operate in a manner that's consistent with other businesses within that zoning designation.
I guess my question is, do we have the ability to say, okay, yes, we will allow it if, or is it just if it's a yes or it's yes or no?
Yeah, I think that would have to be something through a PUD. It would be a separate zoning process just for that property, where you could negotiate some additional, criteria for it. And that is an option. Yeah.
Because obviously, one of your concerns you mentioned was look, and that's understandable, but is sound, is that an issue?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And when it was passed for them to build there, it was supposed to have the raised
Raised berms,
so you couldn't see it, and it was supposed to be brick, and it's not.
Doug Johnson was a great guy in the city, he was there, and Scott, I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
But, Doug and I were good friends, but, Doug actually said, they did not build what they were supposed to. There's nothing I can do about it. But, they brought in an artist rendering, and he said they simply did not build the building that they were going to build. But that goes to what Mr. Morris is saying about not fitting in with the city. I realize both, guys are trying to make a point of raising to a higher standard. I made a lot of Eagles guys mad years and years ago. I said, you put up a damn pole barn in the city of Lebanon, and they got all bent out of shape. It's not a pole barn. It's like, yeah, it's a skill. It's the same. does not fit in the city of Lebanon. You know, it's supposed to be, you know, we work on our house, our neighbors work on their houses. The Corwin house looks nice, and it does not fit with own land or any of that. You know, I'm much in favor of what you said tonight about let's raise the bar, and that's a shining example of what happened when the bar's there.
I think that, so the city, we've kind of had two requests for the Central Business District rezoning. The other request was the old kind of church, the old Opry property on Cherry Street. You know, obviously, they've got a situation where that's similar. It's a residentially zoned district. The building obviously has challenges to be used as residential. You know, council would have the option to you know, treat these two blocks differently if you had an interest in the Eagles block being more of a, you know, PUD with some restrictions versus the others. I mean, that's why we have these public hearings, is to kind of work through that. So I just wanted to point that out, that, you know, there are options to kind of take different tracks with the two areas that you see on the map.
Okay, so
We have
would be able
some
to.
Eagles representatives, if you would. Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I don't have my glasses on. My bad.
About the rezoning, or?
Yes.
Sure.
Thought that was an Eagles. My bad. I apologize.
Yeah, thank you. Veterans of Foreign Wars. Mike Milam, my address is 474 Yale Drive. I'm not sure if this is even the right meeting, but at our post with you guys doing the rezoning, we're on West Silver Street right there. We only have 8 parking spots. And now with LCMB going in across the street, they take up some of our 8 parking spots. And now the fire station has been turned into a bar or brewery. And of course, I'm not sure where they're going to park. So at our VFW post, which we've been there since 1946, we're really concerned about parking for our members, and especially some of our disabled members. We have one member that's 92. He was in the Chosin Reservoir in Korea, had some frostbite issues. We have one handicapped parking spot at the bottom of the hill by the police station. We're just concerned about parking at our post, and if you guys have addressed that at all, or what you're going to do with the parking once this once the brewery gets going, where are they going to park? The people, like I said, from the bank have already taken up half of our parking spots across the street. We only had 8 to begin with. And so our concern is we really just don't have any parking. And what are we going to do about more public parking if we're bringing more businesses into the downtown area? And that's really our concern.
That's your only parking, is the street in front of?
Yes, sir.
You don't have anything in the back?
No, sir.
Okay.
No. There's an alley there beside us, but there's no parking on it except over by docks. And it's too far for, of course, some of our elderly members to come.
No, I agree.
Like I said, we've got 8 spots. And now the bank, during working hours, people that are using LCMB there, even though they've got a huge parking lot behind their building, behind the fire station, they park on the street. And they take half of ours. Like I said, we've only got the 8 to begin with, you know, so, yeah.
I've spoken with, man, I can't remember who it was, but specifically about that handicap accessible spot.
Right, we've got the one spot, and of course, like I said, it's at the bottom of the hill, and it's still not really very conducive for our handicapped people to park there and have to trudge up the hill, especially in the winter time.
And this was years ago that we spoke about this. Is it, and this is going to be more of a planning perspective, is the ability to move that spot up something?
Yeah, I just made a note about, we may be able to move that handicap parking spot
And
closer.
we used to also be able to use the 2 spots in front of the police department, and we left our van there overnight one night, and they came out the next day and put up signs saying police parking only. So we actually lost those 2 spots in front of the police station, because we used to be able to use those also.
Are your other spots marked like VFW only or
No, of
anything
course
like
not.
that?
No, there's the one that's been marked handicap that they put in within the last couple of years. And like I said, there's 5 on the one side. We used to have the 2 in front of the police department, which they've blocked off now from us, so we can't use those anymore. Then there's 5 on the other side of the street in front of the bank now, which ends up filling up with bank customers. even though they've got the huge lot out back. But we didn't know that if you could actually put up signs, VFW only. I don't know. You could
Unfortunately, because it's public right away.
Right, you couldn't regulate that. It would be too hard. Who's going to go out and check? Oh, you don't have a VFW sticker.
You have every store wanting, I was just thinking that too. In honor of you, but you can see where everybody would have a 92-year-old who needed to park in front.
Right. So it would be hard to regulate, but, of course, last year we gave away $31,000 here in our local community between the $5,000 for the Toys for Tots we do every year to the Lebanon High School Band, the ROTC. We do a lot of community stuff. We'll do the Memorial Day Parade here in a few weeks, and, of course, our Veterans Day program. So we would just, like I said, some consideration, maybe. I'm not really sure where you would put more parking spots, or there's really not a way to keep bank people from parking in the few that we have. I'm not really sure what the answer would be.
Well, we can definitely take care of, we can look at police signs, and we can also look at the
Right, so
handicap.
that would at least give us 2 more, but I think we left our van there overnight one time and they didn't like it, so the very next day they put up signs saying police business only or something.
Yeah, I can definitely take a look at that.
That took away 2 of our spots.
I know the brewery is going to be advertising very heavily for their customers to use the city-owned parking lot on Sycamore there.
Is that the one by Doc's?
Yeah, well, kind of further. Just down Sycamore.
Right.
And
that's
Mulberry
really
Street there.
Our kind of concern is, once that opens, there's going to be no parking for our VFW members, basically. And I'm not sure what the hours of that place is going to be, but of course we're open 7 days a week, 11 until about 9 at night and so forth. But that's really going to hurt us as far as just parking for our veterans and some of our elderly members and stuff. So
you had mentioned before that you had 8 parking spots beforehand.
Well, there's 9 actually.
Okay, that's still a small amount of parking spots.
Right.
But was that sufficient up till recently, or?
No. Oh, no. That's always been our biggest complaint. We've actually been in talks with the American Legion before to try to buy their building when they were kind of going under, it's because they have a beautiful big parking lot and they had lots of property, and then they rented it to the Opry and all that kind of stuff. So we had been in talks with them, but that's one of our, like I said, we've been in that same building since 1946, and I'm sure Lebanon was a lot different back in 1946. And so, parking has always been an issue with us, but it's just getting worse now. With losing the 2 spots in front of the police department, with the brewery opening, we're just afraid. And of course, LC&B moved into that corner, big, beautiful building, but instead of using their lot behind the building, people are using those spots there. So it's gotten worse is all.
So where are the majority of the veterans parking at this point, I guess?
Well, either they don't come to the post anymore, or they'll park up on the main street and then, of course, walk down around the corner. A lot of our elderly just don't come anymore.
So attendance is, significantly down or down a little bit?
Right. Our membership as a whole is down. It is for all veterans organizations because they're dying off, the World War II veterans, the Korea veterans, and so forth. So membership is down as a whole for the VFW. But in our post alone, a lot of our older members, like I said, have just quit coming to, for the camaraderie and to hang out or coming to meetings and stuff like that, just because there is no parking. Like I said, it's been a problem for quite a while. It's just getting worse now with the brewery, and all that. And the bank being there now has taken up some of our spots.
Are those metered on the bank side?
They're metered on our side, but not the bank side.
I can send an email to the bank and maybe just ask
Pardon
them.
me?
I can send an email to the bank and maybe just ask if they could try to address that.
Right, because, of course, they do have that huge lot, which, of course, they do also let us use their lot, like after hours and on weekends, which is really nice of them and stuff like that. But again, some of our elderly, it's hard to walk from that parking lot up the steps and all the way across the street. When people turn right off of the main street there onto Silver Street, it's kind of like Frogman. You have to really watch. Because people fly around that corner there, and they're really close to the cars. It's not very much room, especially at 5 o'clock at night when a lot of people come down the hill and come out that way. So if you're going to try to cross the street right there, you kind of take your life into your own hands and,
We know what Frogman is.
Yeah, you do the Frogman. It kind of runs close and stuff, but people fly around that corner. And so we would just like some way to get some more parking or
some sign spots or something over there.
We'll definitely look at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Brown,
you. Thank you.
I have a question
Yeah,
about that
go
real quick. Just, obviously, you can't make a sign that says, okay, only this, but would it be possible, obviously, people don't always follow signs, but just as an encouragement, a sign that would be LC&B parking this way, or like brewery parking this way, those kind of signs that just kind of,
Are you,
to
in
help
terms of
encourage it?
directing them to the lots? the
Yeah, where they,
parking lots?
yeah, where they should.
Yeah, I know the brewery has talked about doing signage for their facility in terms of where, the public parking lot, because they have concerns about that as well,
Yeah.
where they're going to park. We as a city typically don't make signs directing people to private parking.
Well,
which
I
would
mean,
be
could the bank, for
LCNB.
example, would there be I can't visualize this, but would there be a spot that would be appropriate for the bank to have a sign that says bank parking this way?
Probably at their access drive there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing, because that's not really the public doesn't really come to that, that office space, so I'm guessing
Okay.
it might be employees.
Oh,
and so
okay. Well, all right, that'd be different then,
I was going to send an
yeah.
email to see if we can maybe have them, because that's really where we want them parking as well, is in the
Yeah.
public parking lot.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, just on that,
Could you come to the microphone? Because
Yeah.
nobody can.
thank you for your service. I was here for another issue, but these guys touched on something that's probably near and dear to all of us, our veterans of foreign wars. On those spots, and I've lived in Lebanon for 30 years, so I'd like to see and you were touching on that, as a courtesy to our veterans, we'd like to keep these spots and just put signs on those spots asking for people to be courteous. We'd like to maintain these spots for our veterans of foreign wars, similar to like you would have a employee of the month. It's not an enforceable thing, it's just as a courtesy. So you put some courtesy signs up and touch on people's good nature.
I'd be in favor of that, or even, because for a while we had the 5-minute parking for carryout, and that also was still public right-of-way, and it wasn't really enforced. I think something that says that, and whether it's a signage or even painting or otherwise marking those as out of a courtesy. I don't think Home Depot enforces, but it recommends.
Honorary VFW spot or some sign.
We were just talking about that, follow-up on that is just as simple as reserved for veterans, right?
I'm sorry to be annoying. Could you come to the microphone?
Sure. No, I just following up on what Mike had said, was the fact that maybe it's just a veteran, like you're saying Home Depot, right? It's just a veteran reserved parking. It's not for the VFW. If somebody chooses to go there as a veteran and go do the brewery, that's a choice. You can't force it, but at least there's just a respect level for the veterans.
Yeah. Thank you.
I would like us to look at that.
Yeah,
to
we
do
can
that.
look at
I would agree with that 100%.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's easy, for us to drive by that building every day and not really think about where do you park. And now that I'm thinking about it, there is no parking at all.
We also are actually in the middle of repainting the whole building right now. We're working on it now. It's going to be about $15,000, so the building will look nicer here soon and have some different signage on the front, so it's easier to tell. Because now it kind of looks like a cold storage warehouse.
Which is very trendy.
If you're in a red light, you just see a big white building, a wall, so it looks like a cold storage warehouse.
Great spot for a mural, huh?
The different color, we're going to get a lighted sign and a VFW across the wall that will be in the front, and we're going to light the VFW at the top. So it's going to look nicer in line with the downtown Lebanon theme. Actually, the colors are used on the wall.
Okay.
So it will look nicer and stuff, but yeah, we appreciate some parking.
Very good. Thank you for coming.
Those are easy. Those are fun fixes.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do something about that. I wanted to touch on the request for this amendment for the Eagles. Why was that request made? What are they looking to do that they can't accomplish in like a CRD concept?
So I know what they had indicated to us, and we just had one meeting with them, and I think they followed up with a written request. So they have an interest in, they've got the building. My understanding is they have an interest in keeping one side of the building, kind of the private Eagles member-only area. And then the other side would allow for public access if they have an event or something going on, I guess it'd be as you're looking at the building, the right side. And so that would entail a different type of liquor permit for them. And so I think staff's reservation with that, consistent with what Mr. Hawley communicated, is, it's in a residential district now. So when we talk about opening up the building for more of a public type use as opposed to a member only, that really doesn't fit into the residential zoning designation. So from our perspective, to accomplish that, it really should be in a commercial district. So that is the request.
Okay. I think I would agree with that, because if you're splitting the building up, it's like, how do you enforce that?
Correct.
No, you're not allowed to stand on this side of the
Right.
sidewalk. You have to be on that side of it. That would be kind of a nightmare.
If this gets changed and the Eagles want to start doing banquets, weddings, whatever, do the neighborhood, the residents have an opportunity to come forward and say, to have a say-so on what gets to happen there?
Not necessarily. I mean, we have a noise ordinance.
Right.
So there are, those requirements. But in terms of, specific events that they may use their property for, it necessarily wouldn't go through any sort of city permit or city zoning standpoint. We don't really permit events on private property.
Okay.
For example, what happens at the fairgrounds, from any sort of activity standpoint, the city has no role in actually approving or reviewing that. So our ability to review, permit, approve events is limited to public property or public right-of-way.
So if this doesn't go black and stays the way it is, the Eagles can continue to do what they're doing there now, but they won't be able to do beyond that? I guess what I'm thinking is, because I back up to the property as well, but they've always been a good neighbor. I brought that up before. I'm farther away and I have a hill and tree buffer, so I don't hear them. But I want to be respectful to the neighborhood as well, that if I lived where the Hollies lived, I might have some objection as well to if there's going to be more eagleness going on down there. Again, not tarnishing anybody that's there, but we're trying to fix something that we didn't create. It's a bad mixture there, period. Not just how the building looks, because that's over and done, but we have some say-so now, and trying to come up with a compromise to give the Eagles maybe what they need or what they want, but also respect the neighborhood that's around it. And it sounds like Clay Street might be the next developmental stage if people are finally investing money down that road. I mean, it is something to think about.
Yeah, I think if council has a desire to put some of those restrictions or conditions, the PUD process would be the way to accomplish that.
How much do we have with that? I mean, like you said, maybe the PUD would be the opportunity to fix some of the wrongs that were already done in that situation. Like, okay, and I don't know, again, what the restrictions would be or whatever, but for example, okay, if this is what you want to do, then you know what, then this berm that was supposed to be here and these trees, it's got to be here, because this is going to affect people now. And maybe you need to put something else on the outside that, makes it look a little bit better, because it's going to be a business now. And, maybe this is an opportunity to make it better. I don't know, because I guess it depends on how restrictive or permissive, we can be. And again, not being restrictive to them, but protective of the people who live around.
Yeah, I think all of those would be options, and especially if some of that was included in the original plan.
Let's go back to that.
Go back to that and see kind of what was supposed to happen originally that apparently didn't. And,
So the straight CBD, is that going to be more disruptive to neighbors? That's kind of the crux of the question. Or is it going to help? Is it got tighter noise restrictions than residential? Probably not.
No.
Yeah,
No.
so it would be, if it's more disruptive to neighbors, that's not good.
I tend to agree with that.
Well, the other thing you would have would be, if all that would go commercial, which would include the old, well, at one time it was a township firehouse and the city maintenance garage. The access to that would be Clay Street, which is a residential street. So if you allow all that to become commercial, all that commercial traffic is going to be coming up Clay Street. There's no other way out of it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree a little bit with what Mike was saying. If it's potentially more detrimental to the citizens potentially than beneficial, then, that's not our job here, right? Our job is to help make things better. So I would tend to agree that it's really a path that I don't think we want to go down.
So this will come back before us at working council?
So it'll be at, obviously there'll be no vote tonight, just the first reading, but it'll be at the work session next week for continued discussion.
And has there been any feedback about this second block up by Mechanic, in between Mechanic and East?
Other than several of the property owners within that area have expressed support for it, I'm not aware of any property owner within that, the black box there on Warren that's expressed opposition. Greg, are you? No.
So my only question on that is, do we want that church there, theoretically, to be a bar? Because that would be under a bar, brew pub, tavern. Huh?
The old,
Yeah.
the one that.
Yeah,
The old Opry Church?
exactly.
Is that on Cherry? I can't.
That's on Cherry.
That's on Cherry.
That would be my only hesitation to move that into into the CBD and not into a CRD concept. But it would make more, it does, I understand why it makes sense, because of the,
I'm not sure it'll be used for anything else.
yeah. So I'm just kind of,
The owners of that, I've just heard a couple, I heard they wanted to make it a duplex.
Yeah, so what they've expressed to the city is a desire to turn that into an office.
So now it's
That's what
to
they'd
an
like to
office
do, is
building.
an office,
Okay.
use it for an office use, correct. I think they looked at converting it into living units and felt like it was just cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
and they are the driving?
They gave the city a letter requesting it, so they're
Okay.
one of the property owners kind of within this general area who had requested consideration. I believe the Presbyterian Church has also requested consideration.
To keep the building though, correct?
Well, they own several properties north of the old Opry Church. They're up on Warren Street.
And the Methodist Church hasn't?
They're not in that area. They're on the west side
On the
of
other
Cherry
side,
Street, yeah.
Right, okay.
And all the residents in this block have
Or no, I'm sorry,
notification?
they are within that area because it goes to Mechanic Street.
Yeah, they're right across the street, and then
Right.
their, like, central building is right beside it. I know there's been a little
Their
bit of a
office.
parking, but my main thing is that building not get torn down. I mean,
Yeah.
if they- yeah.
Exactly.
The old church, the old
Yeah.
Opry building,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I mean.
So my question is, if they're expressing interest in office, that would be covered under the CRD, which I love the CRD, by the way. I'm a huge fan. Because it gives us the opportunity to do things like this without opening up all of the opportunities that the CBD opens up.
Yeah.
Which was some of the neighborhood's
Absolutely.
concern, was making
Absolutely.
their neighborhood a central business district.
Yep.
Scott, were all the residents in the current block notified of this
Yes.
change? So
Yeah.
they've had a chance to express?
Yeah, this is the second public hearing, and they've been notified both times.
Well, public hearings tend to sometimes not
Yeah.
slipped by people's attention,
Right.
but were they mailed notifications?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
We'll have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Mr. Coe?
Yes.
Hold on a second.
Yes, ma'am?
We're still good, right, Greg, in the New Street, Mechanic Street area, as far as not being business to stay in residential?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And so the downtown, for the business district, it will be basically Broadway, and everything east of that is still residential. Because even the post office is staying in the residential.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you for your feedback at our last
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
That was helpful. Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
Mayor Matthews? Mayor Messer?
Yes.
Mr. Joy?
Yes. That's a good.
Thank you, guys.
So I will need a motion to open the public hearing for zoning map amendment for 345 Miller Road.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Sellers?
Yes.
Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Mr. Coe?
Yes.
Mayor Messer?
Yes.
Mayor Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Lammerow?
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers?
Yes.
So this is a public hearing for a map amendment at 345 Miller Road, which would essentially be creating a PUD designation for this property for 12 single-family homes. Greg?
Correct. The applicant is Monarch Homes. Chris Bernice is here for them. This is a residential 1C district. They're interested in making a PUD with the same zoning designation. This is the parcel from above. It's 4.47 acres for a PUD for single-family homes. Currently, the lot is vacant. This is an access easement that will provide sewer for the property. And then, as you can kind of see a little bit here, the existing development pattern on the southern side is all front-loading garages. Currently, in the Envision Lebanon plan, this is labeled as transitional rural residential, which I think was an optimistic view because of the large lot homes and the fact that this was vacant and agricultural. Its zoning is R1C. But the applicant is protecting certain natural features, such as the tree canopy on the western portion that you'll see, and they are doing a trail connection as well. So meets some of the intent of that Envision Lebanon plan. Once again, R1C zoning permits 3.5 dwelling units to the acre. The applicant would meet the base zoning district standards because they would be permitted 15 single-family units. And once again, this is a good example of why we're reducing that density number a little bit, because you can see you can't even fit 15 units on that, so there's a reason to make some adjustments to the zoning code. One of the primary goals of the PUD is to have lots 1 through 5 facing Miller Road to keep the road street frontage consistent with the residential properties along the south side of Miller Road. If you look at the standards and what's depicted on the concept, the applicant meets or exceeds the standards for that base district. And in fact, the lot sizes on the southern half are the 70-foot, which are required, but larger on the northern portion up to 107 feet. So this was the draft that was submitted. I think you saw this at your work session here with the 13 lots. Through public input from the property owner to the south and some back and forth discussions with staff, the applicant has reduced it down to 12 lots. And then you can see like a buffer with berming on the southern portion to help screen the larger lot home sites that you see. And then you can see the open space lot that's saved over here with the tree canopy that exists. This is a bike, or not a bike path, but the bike path is up here, a 10-foot bike path, and this is a sidewalk that goes on just the southern side of the properties to make kind of a whole loop for their active open space requirement. These would both be retention ponds, so they would hold water. So that's kind of a nice feature for the site. The architectural style of the home is very consistent with kind of the products that we've seen, and the applicant is developing properties in Revere's Run There's a stone brick foundation on the front with vinyl siding on the remaining sections of the house. Originally, staff had recommended stone and brick foundations on all sides of the home, but the applicant is requesting to not do full brick wrap. Monarch is proposing stone or brick wrap on high visibility areas, which would be the sides of lot number 1, which is that one that floats by itself, and then the left side of lot 2 as you come into the private street, and the right side of lot 5, which is the far side. And PC, our Planning Commission, recommended approval of that concept plan. So here's the architectural style of the homes. The ranch, this is the kind of footprint that you would see facing towards Miller Road with the side loading garages. Street trees, they meet the requirement of that. Pre-preservation, I've already talked about. And then the evergreen trees along the buffer as well. So the bike trail is something that we're starting to require, and through the PUD process, the applicant was willing to do that, to have that 10-foot bike trail connected as outlined in the Safe Routes to School plan, that eventually Miller Road will have a bike lane on it, and this would be the first start of that. And then here's their new application with one less house on that with the bike path as well. So this is the side that would have a 4-foot or a little knee wall of stone, kind of knee wall of stone, and a knee wall of stone on 5. The neighbor did request, in full disclosure, as I spoke with her today, she's very happy with the berm that's been there and the open discourse she's had with the applicant, but did request that a little knee wall be along on lot number 12, was something that the south property owner requested. The map amendments is consistent with the Lebanon zoning code and purpose of the Lebanon zoning code by fostering development that's similar to the properties around that. So with that, staff is, or at least staff recommended approval, and then Planning Commission is recommending approval of the proposed map amendment requested by Monarch Homes to rezone the little over 4 acres on Miller Road to a PUD with 12 lots and the concept plan.
Thanks, sir. If anybody is here to speak to this, they can come to the microphone. Yes, sir. State your name and address.
My name is Mike Chrysler, 409 Miller Road. My property directly abuts up against that, and I was just here to say that I don't have any issues with it. I think the way Miller Road flows right now from east to west is you see the apartments, and then you see a couple of duplexes, and then you see single-family residents as you flow west on it. And I think that this will fit right in to the flow on Miller Road.
Agreed.
I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I live on 325 Miller Road, so we built the house that's behind all of these.
Okay, yeah.
I just didn't, we kind of built our house and we made it look nice, and we're excited for what's happening. We used to live downtown. We're excited that we're still not far from downtown. And I feel like we need to take a step up, and we need to want people to come downtown. We're on Miller Road. You do see a lot of the apartments and stuff like that, where you see the backs of Garfield Park. Mm-hmm. And like he said, it's been years that some of those houses it doesn't look good. So I'm really for what he had said about putting the wraps around the houses, that kind of stuff, so that it just looks nicer and it stays longer. Mm-hmm. And it's not doing what we've already been doing. It's taking that next step up, especially since it's on such a main road. Why shouldn't those houses all look nice and not be, if it's a development somewhere else where you're not on a main road and you aren't seeing it all the time. Just
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, one more. Since they changed the entrance to be right in front of Garfield Park, the street right in front of us up to, is it Rosemary? Or the next street up. Right
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. People park there, and they park big, equipment trucks, and it's there all the time. So if we could make that maybe a no parking, because it's really dangerous when you're trying to get out, and now having 12 more people or families trying to get out in just that small area, just the visibility. And there's also the crosswalk is going to be there as well, the new crosswalk. It's just right after that. So to just have some visibility of people and cars and things, I think would really help make things a lot safer since there's a lot more going on there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
John Bisman is a realtor, but I'm also a property owner adjacent to this property. So I have a property on 220 Rosemary. I am the listing realtor of the property, so I need to disclose that, and I'm also helping Chris put this together. And I'm really excited about the package. Scott and I know that we talked about this one, and Greg spent quite a bit of time, and Dana with me on this property because it provides a lot of unique characteristics. Talking with a lot of different builders and trying to be presented, I was very, very excited that Chris was interested because I think Chris has a good relationship with Greg in the city, but I also think that he puts together a good sellable product at an affordable price. As I talked with some other builders, this really became a pretty constrained property because of the unique parts of where sewer and everything is located in space. And do I price myself out of the market? You know, we can't build a $600,000-$700,000 house when there's $300,000 houses that are being rented, you know, all close, and it provides unique challenges. So I was really excited with Chris about what he put together and the fact that this plan had kind of exceeded my expectations. So as a property owner, I'm really excited about what's coming in because it's going to increase the property values that I have now. But I think he's done a great job, and Greg has done a fantastic job. You guys got a winner here. So, thanks. Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, just to jump in.
You're good.
When she touched on the traffic on Miller Road, I've lived in Miller Road since '91. It is, especially west to east, there's a speeding problem through there.
Yeah.
It's straight, it's wide. People go what they feel like going. If a consideration could be put in on making one of the corners a four-way, just so cars get halfway down the road, have to stop, and then continue. That might be something that we could consider with this, especially with it being closer to the school end of the road, four-way there. One of my concerns with that is people going through gears instead of just being in gear as they go past my house, because I front Miller Road. So that's, you know, that would make it a little bit louder, but it would make it safer. So just a four-way maybe consideration for the traffic on that. And that's going to be near the school crosswalk down here on Catherine also.
Yeah.
So,
I will be
thank you.
kids walk to school, and I live right there because of the traffic and just the visibility is so bad.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably need to be a lighted four-way, being new, if that was considered.
Yeah, I think this development kind of highlights our PUD process and kind of goes back to what we had talked about earlier tonight. Chris working with Greg, the orientation of these houses is a big thing. They'll all be forward facing instead of rear facing on Miller Road. The original plan, I think, had an extra house in it, but that has been since removed. From what it was presented in the PUD, I think this plan is very good. I think it'll fit well right on that road there. So I think it'll bring property values higher in that area, and it'll again raise the bar on that road. So.
I'm curious, on the road coming out, which lane it's lining up with Garfield. I'm assuming that'll be looked at, because you got, isn't that a split, like an island in between there? Yeah. And just the traffic, it just made me think of it with the traffic. Maybe there's, just as long as we're considering that.
Yeah, are those lining right up?
Well, it's going to be wider.
Is that what, I can't see.
Yeah, what we had worked with staff on with that was to line the center line of Garfield Park entrance up with ours. So yeah, it'll be a little unusual, being that it's a boulevard entry across the way, with a private road on our side. Yeah.
I guess I'm curious about the safety issue. I mean, from where I live, when you pull out of our subdivision, there's another one coming across too, and that can be obviously, and it's the same road, okay? So there's a lot of traffic, obviously, and with it being right by the school too. I'm just curious about what, how that affects the safety, because we, obviously you have to wait sometimes. Garfield Park is a massive subdivision. And like, in and out of school times or something like that, I could see it really being an issue where somebody's got to sit and wait at one subdivision, at one section or the other, to wait till somebody on the other side goes. Maybe you can tell me if I'm not looking at it right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit more of an engineering question,
Yeah.
but our engineers did look at it. Once again, public process and involvement, the entrance did come out here on the first iteration that you may have seen. There was a concern from the property owner in Garfield Park where that would just come, it was somehow lined right up with their backyard. And so Chris was adaptive to switching it, and so we at least like to have it lined up somewhat for safety reasons, to have a normal intersection. Someone at Planning Commission did bring up the four-way stop as well, which would be another engineering decision.
Yeah.
But engineering did look at it, and I think what their thoughts were the number of houses as well, but they didn't see a direct concern with so long as it was directly lined up with Garfield Park.
Well, it's exciting. I was just in one of your products here, helping somebody move in, so this is good, nice.
I just wanted to mention something too, because this comes up, and it comes up for me, and it comes up for a lot of us. When we look at this, these aren't options of nothing or this, it's this, that's the PUD, which is nicer, or something else. So it's not when we vote on these things, it's not well, we'd rather have nothing. That's nice, but we don't have that option. So I just want to, mention that again, because we've talked about that before, and because a lot of people have concerns about, open area spaces and keeping them that way, and unfortunately, that's not always the choice that we have. So.
That entranceway reminds me of where Navajo and Countryside and Deerfield. Not that 12 is equal to Countrysides, but that's real similar, and that four-way works real well there. And I think that those are things that we can look at if it becomes a problem, because with the schools, and I know there's a lot of thought going into the bike trails and safe communities. There's a lot of different entities looking at making that whole area safer with lighting and flashing crosswalks. And so Miller Road is definitely under Lebanon's radar as far as making that more. And I agree. I think lining them up is better than having multiple entrances into that area. I did have one question for you, Chris. Is there an HOA or like some of this area, like the retention ponds and stuff? Yes. Who maintains those in a subdivision like this?
Yeah, well, this would be, it's a good question. This would fall under an HOA that would maintain the open space and the the private road right-of-way. And anything that's common, as well as some architectural control and community control that HOAs typically
So
have.
that neighborhood will have an HOA?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I like that too. I think that instead of just leaving it to the nice guy with the mower, so, who gets tired after the first time. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Burt, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Greg, you did a fantastic job.
Keyboard.
You got more?
Yeah. More.
Yeah.
So we have no previous business. Moving on to new business. We have ordinance number 2022-047. And Dan, I can read it, or you can go ahead and do that.
I'm all set, thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 2022-047, approving an update to the city's park impact fees as recommended by the recently approved impact fee study performed by Tischler Bice Incorporated. This ordinance approves an update to the city's park impact fees to ensure that new development is equitably contributing to demands placed on park infrastructure and amenities. The impact fee is paid to the city by the developer for each new residential building constructed and can only be used for the expansion of park and trail facilities. And I do just have a couple of slides here, just kind of wanted to make sure we talked through. I know council got a very in-depth presentation at a work session on this. But the city's had impact fees now for, I believe, at least 8 years. And what these fees are is a way to meet growth-related infrastructure needs. And for us, it's specific to transportation or roadway impact fees and our parks. So what it does require new development to pay their proportionate share of capital costs for system improvements that are related to our roadway system or our park system. And it's important to note that the impact fees cannot be used to support system maintenance or repair of these facilities. So it's only for the expansion of these types of facilities that can be directly related to the growth and the demands that growth places on them. So we did obviously commission an impact fee study which utilized the incremental approach to quantify the impact that new development has on the transportation and parks levels of service. And these recommended impact fees essentially establish what is needed to maintain our current level of service when it comes to our transportation system and park system as the community grows. So what's ultimately being recommended is a phased approach where beginning with the adoption of this ordinance, the transportation impact fees would be at the maximum recommended level. The parks impact fees that would be established are at the 70% maximum threshold initially, and then in 2023, the park impact fees would increase to 80% of the maximum threshold, and then finally, in January of 2024, that would increase to 90% of the maximum allowable parks impact fee. So attached to the ordinance is specifics to the study, the methodology that established these fees, and also the actual fees themselves. But just wanted to provide a quick overview.
Can I get a motion for a first read?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments on this before we move on? Very good. Ordinance number 2022-048.
This is a first reading of ordinance 2022-048, approving an update to the city's transportation impact fees as recommended by the recently completed impact fee study performed by Tischler Bice Incorporated. This ordinance approves an update to the city's transportation impact fees to ensure that new development is equitably contributing to demands placed on roadway capacity. The impact fee is paid to the city by the developer for each new residential and commercial building constructed and can only be used for the widening or construction of new major roadways.
Can I get a motion for first read?
So moved.
Second.
You had like 4 there. Any questions or comments on that before we move on? Ordinance number 2022-049.
Ordinance 2022-049 is authorizing an agreement with Fellowship Baptist Church in the amount of $60,000 for right-of-way acquisition in support of the Southern Bike Trail Expansion Project and declaring an emergency. This ordinance authorizes an agreement with Fellowship Baptist Church to purchase property necessary for the construction of the Deerfield Road Bike Path Extension Project and to secure right-of-way for an existing electric utility line that is currently on the property but not in an easement.
Can I get a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
Mr. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers?
Yes.
Mr. Lamoureux?
Yes.
Mayor Messer?
Yes. You almost got me on that one, Dan. I almost responded to Vice Mayor. I was like,
It's getting late, isn't it?
You are.
Ordinance number 2022-050.
Ordinance 2022-050 is approving the final plat at the corner of West Main Street and Neil Armstrong Way to create a new lot for Big Mike's and declaring an emergency. This ordinance approves the creation of a new lot of record, enabling the applicant to transfer 1.925 acres for the Big Mike's fuel service station and drive-through while retaining the remainder of the property for future development. This plat has been recommended by our Planning Commission.
Can I get a motion to adopt?
Big Mike says, so moved.
You can have that one back.
Yeah, it's all yours.
I'll second it then.
There we go. Any comments or questions? Sorry, Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Mr. Lamoureux?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
Mayor Messer?
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Norris?
Yes. Ordinance 2022-051.
This is the first reading of ordinance 2022-051, updating section 133.02, approved positions and titles of the Lebanon City Code. This ordinance approves the addition of a position of Human Resource Manager, grade 6, and the removal of the Information Technology Administrator position, which is currently not filled.
Can I get a motion for first read?
So moved.
Second.
No questions? Ordinance number 2022-052.
Ordinance 2022-052 is approving a Type 1 annexation agreement with Union Township for the buyer's annexation to annex 80 acres off Kingsview Drive and declaring an emergency. This ordinance approves the annexation of 80 acres of property along Kingsview Drive, which is adjacent to the existing Kingsview Business Park, to support the future expansion of the business park, including the provision of all public safety and utility services.
Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So I want to give staff a high five for working on this for a while. This has been coming for a while. So and then our friends from Union Township who helped make this happen. 80 acres of property in Kingsview is a big deal.
It's a great opportunity.
And it's a great opportunity that we have. So thank you for your work on that. Any other comments on that?
I would echo that. Great job.
Yep. Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Mr. Cope?
Yes.
Mayor Messer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Lamoureux?
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers?
Yes.
Ordinance number 2022-053.
This is the first reading of ordinance 2022-053, approving text amendments to the official zoning ordinance based on the Envision Lebanon Comprehensive Plan recommendations as recommended by Planning Commission. This ordinance approves text amendments to various chapters of the official zoning ordinance that has been based on the Envision Lebanon Comprehensive Plan and has been recommended by the Planning Commission.
Can I get a motion for a first read?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on that? Ordinance number 2022-054.
This is the first reading of ordinance 2022-054, rezoning properties adjacent to downtown from residential 1 urban to central business district CBD. This ordinance approves the rezoning of certain properties adjacent to downtown from residential R1U to central business district to address existing non-conforming uses and allow for the future expansion of the central business district. This has been recommended by the Planning Commission.
Can I get a motion to approve a first read?
So moved. Second.
Question. We still retain the ability for the changes discussed?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Ordinance number 2022-055.
This is the first reading of ordinance 2022-055, approving a zoning map amendment requested by Monarch Homes to rezone 4.47 acres at 345 Miller Road to create 12 single-family lots as approved by the Planning Commission. This ordinance approves a zoning map amendment, which has been requested by Monarch Homes to rezone 4.47 acres located at 345 Miller Road from residential R1C to R1C PUD, which will create 12 single-family lots.
Get a motion for first read?
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance number 2022-056.
Ordinance 2022-056 is approving a supplemental appropriation in the General Fund Park Improvement Fund in the amount of $325,000 to support the Miller Ecological Park Welcome Center and declaring an emergency.
This ordinance approves a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $325,000 to support the Miller Ecological Park Welcome Center. This project is a priority for 2022, and the costs are being offset by private donations in the amount of $120,000 from the Warren County Foundation and $150,000 in ARPA funds. And I do have a few slides that kind of speak to this ordinance and the next one, which are related. So a little bit of the project background. So the downtown restroom project, which was budgeted in this year's operating budget. Currently, there are no public restrooms in downtown. I've been with the city for 20 years, and I feel like the community's been talking about that for 20 years. So what we have done to try to address kind of the visitor need for restrooms downtown is we do have the city building open from 11 to 4 on Saturdays, about 9 months out of the year. Obviously, we have to staff that. And we do have some facility security concerns kind of opening up this building during the Saturdays, but that's kind of the approach we've taken. The downtown public restrooms, constructing new restrooms, was identified as a short-term recommendation of the downtown master plan, and also was a recommendation of the recently adopted Parks Master Plan. So there has been a lot of kind of community input, community discussion about the need for this type of project. Last year, the city went out and secured a $171,000 state capital budget grant to help support this project and move it forward into construction this year. The Miller Ecological Park Welcome Center, for those of you who haven't been out to Miller Park, it's a 100-acre community park. Gets used quite a bit, different youth groups, residents, there's events out there. Currently, that park is served by one portalet, and over the years, the park has seen a significant increase in demand and use. So the concept is to construct a welcome center, which would consist of a restroom facility and shelter near the front of the park. And again, this has been a recommendation of the Parks Master Plan. From a funding perspective, the city reached out and worked closely with the Warren County Foundation. And they did an outstanding job of reaching out to the community and ultimately raised $120,000 in private donations to help support the construction of this welcome center. And then previously, council had also identified using $150,000 of our ARPA money to support this project. So given that, the city went kind of moved forward with originally just bidding out the downtown public restrooms as a standalone project in February. Those plans were completed first. We wanted to kind of get it out, see where the bids came in, and the bids came in extremely high from our standpoint. So just for the downtown restroom building, the low bid came in at over $500,000. So we kind of went back to the drawing board, worked with the architect to value engineer the downtown restroom building design, and we also decided to combine the bidding out for the construction of that building with the Miller Park Welcome Center to hopefully create some economies of scale by combining two projects into one bid. We got what we consider very favorable bids last week. So the low bid for the combined project, which is to build both of these restroom facilities, came in at a little over $639,000. So given that, staff is recommending that we move forward with emergency language to construct these buildings. There is a timeline associated with that $171,000 state grant. They want us to spend the money by November of this year. So obviously, we're going to focus on getting that project started first to move things forward. That's a little bit of the history on it. This is what the buildings will look like. So this is a rendering of the Miller Park Welcome Center. And then this is a rendering of the downtown restrooms. You can kind of see it tucked in that city lot. That's between the theater company and the barber shop there.
That will be much appreciated during our festival.
Yes.
Yeah. And they'll probably mitigate the amount of portalets we have to.
Yeah, I know all the event organizers are excited. They keep asking, when is that going to happen?
Absolutely.
So definitely help them. It'll allow us then to close the city building on the weekends, obviously.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Did I get a motion already?
No.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So
moved.
Second.
There we go. Any more comments or questions on this?
The only thing I wanted to add was, and Scott did a great job touching on it, is you look at that number, and I know material costs are going up and everything, but you still look at that number, you know, 639,000, it really pops your eyes out, right? But the reality of it, you know, between the ARPA, the private donations, state grant, you know, that takes about $591,000 of that. So makes the cost more than reasonable for the citizens of this community. So just great job, and you know, that's pretty much all I had on that.
And if the original bids that came back, they were for one restroom, weren't they? I mean, they were like 20 or 30%, or almost, no, they were double what we thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think the budget for the downtown restrooms, we initially had targeted at, I think around 350,000. So when we got that
Came back at over
$500,000 bid, we obviously knew we needed to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
We did scale down the size of the building a bit, but you know, we got another interested builder that didn't bid the first time that certainly sharpened their pencil and gave
So
us
did some value engineering
Yep.
and put two in for almost the price of one.
Yep.
How many
So,
restrooms
good
are
job
in
on that.
the downtown one?
I mean, there's two separate, you know, the men's and women's.
Good idea.
Yeah. I think there's like two in each of them. I don't know for sure.
Novel idea.
Yeah.
Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
Mr. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers?
Yes.
Mr. Lamoureux?
Yes.
Mayor Messer?
Yes. Ordinance number 2022-057.
Hold on a second.
Sorry, Dan.
I thought we were finished.
Oh, we got a few more.
Ordinance 2022-057 is authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Leo Brielmeyer in the amount of $639,800 for the construction of downtown public restrooms and a welcome center in Miller Ecological Park and declaring an emergency.
This ordinance approves a contract with the Leo J. Brielmeyer Company for the construction of downtown public restrooms and the Welcome Center in Miller Ecological Park. The two buildings were bid together to reduce costs, and there is an urgency to move forward due to material lead times, grant deadlines, and increasing construction costs.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions on this? Mr. Burke, please call the roll.
Mrs. Eggers?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Lamoureux?
Yes.
Mr. Norris?
Yes.
Mayor Messer?
Yes.
Mr. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
And we are to discussion.
Great, just a couple things. Next meeting of City Council is a work session on Tuesday, May 3rd. Good news, they started delivering the new playground equipment in Harmon Park this week, so the replacement and resurfacing of the play surface material should begin soon. And then you will notice in the next couple days, the gazebo over by the Golden Lamb is coming down. We are replacing that, so it's a project that we actually had encumbered funds for last year, and the contractor is now to the point of moving forward with it. So that gazebo, due to its current condition, is getting replaced. That's all I have.
The May 3rd meeting.
Do we want to bump to 7:30?
Yeah,
For the polls close at 7:30?
yeah.
It's up to you.
That'd be great.
Do you want to bump back? Yeah.
I think we should.
That would be
I
great.
think we should.
Okay.
7:30?
7:30?
Yeah.
It's a work session. Do you guys need it to be, should it be a different day? Or is that day still okay?
I'm fine with it.
Okay, so 7:30?
Yeah. So I'd like to call an executive, I'm just kidding.
Jack says no.
It's like,
There you go. No executive session tonight. Mr. Sellers, do you have anything?
I'll just keep it real short. It's great to hear the comments that we heard today from the public. I mean, it's really helpful for us. You know, we want to do the right thing. I think the overall arching theme is, we view Lebanon as a top-tier community, right? So if you're going to build something here or want to be a part of it, you're going to have to be willing to build top-tier, construction here. And I think that's what we want to make sure we do. But like I said, I really enjoy hearing from the public.
Absolutely. Mr. Lamoureux?
Yeah, along those notes, I appreciate staff's diligence. Those were, some of the questions I asked were a little bit of the feedback that I'd gotten from different folks that I talked to in the community, and I wanted to just, I guess, get those out, and I think we've got a really good plan. It's great to see the kids tonight. Always good to see kids participating in events like that. So it was a good session.
The Norris report. What do you have for us?
Brief tonight. I agree with my co-counsel next door here that I hope as people watch, whether on YouTube or Channel 6, they can understand that coming to these meetings and bringing their input, it works. And it definitely, I try to come, I think we all do, with just kind of an open mind on we've talked about some of this stuff, but some of this I still am thinking about. So I really appreciate the feedback that the community has given, and that neighbors were willing to come to support a development that's literally going to be in their backyard. I mean, that was good. And Mr. Hawley's passion for his historic home that he's put a lot of time and energy in. So I guess that's what I like to see, is more people use this time in that we can represent, their wishes by hearing from them in this type of format.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews?
I want to say thanks to Mr. Burke and his team. Last week was tax day, and they helped hundreds of Lebanon residents finish their taxes. So thank you very much. I went in to have them help with my city taxes. So thank you so much. They did a great service for the community there. The opening day parade for Little Baseball was fantastic, well attended, really great, and other than that, love seeing all the trees are cool posters. It is always a good evening when we have a booming Pledge of Allegiance here.
It was. Good night.
And I would add that I do hope we can do something to alleviate, and I don't know what, if we can get creative to alleviate VFW's parking issues. That's, I think we all appreciate the service that they've already committed to this this country, this city, and to be able to try to figure something out. I'm sure LCNB would love to be able to step up and support them, so that'd be a great conversation to have. And yeah, now that you mentioned it, tax day, you guys did an outstanding job. I was in there, and the wait times were low. People are agitated anyway, time to pay taxes. But I'll tell you what, sitting on this side of this podium now, seeing how the processes that we go through, the clarity in the auditing that you guys do to know that we spend the money wisely, the integrity that's put forth by the whole staff, city council members here, it makes it a lot easier going there and pay the taxes. And as hard as it is, but yeah, so well done. It was run well.
Thank you. We have a great team, and they were all working very hard.
They were pleasant.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Well, and Dan, thank you for your message explaining to us what you had done. I mean, government organizations are not always known for their speed and efficiency, so knowing how you did that, I mean, I loved seeing your message about the changes that you had made to make everything more successful for you guys and for residents. Maybe you can eat a pizza day next year for tax day. Or at least a little extra special lunch or something like that. And I also, you know, what everyone else has said, it was really nice to see a lot of people here tonight, a lot of feedback, because, you know, there's certain issues that we might not know about, like, you know, we can drive around downtown and see that there's not the parking, but for them to come and say, hey, this is an issue, my gosh, yes, let's show, you know, them respect, and even residents, if they heard that and knew that, I mean, because if you don't know, you know, there's nothing you could do about that, but even residents who, if they hear that and know, even without a sign, if they knew that that was what that was for, would tend to be more respectful of that. And of course, congratulations to all the children and and love seeing a big group of them come and participate in the meeting tonight. So I think that's it.
Very good. Yeah, I feel like we did some work tonight, and
Yeah.
I just want to thank the community for coming out and speaking their minds. And a lot of times we have public hearings and nobody shows up, and it's bing, bang, boom. But it was good to hear people's feedback. I took a lot of notes. I think we'll take that information and use it in our next work session and make sure we put together the best package for the city. And I feel like Mr. Matthews hit it right on the head. Even if we get 1% better, it's worth it. So I think we did do that, and we'll continue to move in that direction. So with that, I'll take a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burke?
Mayor Messer,
Yes.
Mr. Norris,
Yes.
Mr. Sellers,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Lamro,
Yes.
Mrs. Eggers,
Yes.
Mr. Cope.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week, or in 2 weeks.